I just saw your picture pop up.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Attendance Certification Training, Data-Driven Three-Tiered Approach to Supervising Attendance. My name is Yi Wang, Director of School Climate, Leadership and Instructional Services at the Santa Clara County Office of Education, and I'm the facilitator for today's webinar. I would like to begin by thanking the three presenters for today's webinar, David Copperrod and Dan Seckham. They are education programs consultants in the Educational Options Office at the California Department of Education. They will tell you a little bit more about themselves later. Stephanie Tegg, Safe and Healthy Schools Coordinator at the Santa Clara County Office of Education and the lead for PBIS Technical Assistance Center in Santa Clara County. Welcome and thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. This webinar will have three parts. In the first part, David and Dan will address the very important topic of reducing the chronic absenteeism rate. The focus on the three tiers of attendance supervision supporting local educational agencies' tiered re-engagement strategies for students in distance learning. Following their presentation, Stephanie will present an evidence-based Tier 2 intervention which can be adapted to support attendance and re-engagement in both synchronous and asynchronous distance learning. The last part of the webinar is an opportunity for you to ask questions. Please submit your questions through the Q&A features in this webinar. And you can also provide your additional comments through the chat. You can also access the handout folder by clicking on the link in the chat. And David and Dan will be very willing to stay online until they answer all questions. They will also respond to questions sent to them by email. And now I'm going to invite both Dan and David to lead the next part of the webinar.
Hi, so I'm Dan. David and I have worked together. He's my work brother over the last 20 years, so we're known collectively as Danvid, for those who know us. Both of us are former classroom teachers within the department. I think I've been in this position 24 years with the Department of Ed and Educational Options. I've led at one time or another every type of educational options program now, but home and hospital, which at the moment David leads on that, but I think everything else I've added continuation ed in the last few months. I got the privilege of building the community day school program from the ground up. I lead opportunity ed, a lot of things. I'm the lead for the department on asset-based behavioral intervention strategies and supports, which is a big area that comes into child welfare and attendance and absenteeism. We'll talk about that with David as strong a right hand as I could ever have. David is the lead, and he'll tell you for the absenteeism attendance side and child welfare and attendance. And I do my best to do a right-hand job with David. We just collaborate, we integrate. In the talk today, you're gonna hear some attitude, I think. Don't write off kids. One of my claims to recognition, I guess, is if you know Freedom Riders and Aaron Gruelle, Aaron's collected a number of Freedom Rider teachers around the world with the attitude, you don't dare write off kids. And I have the honor of being there. So if some attitude comes across, yeah, you don't dare write off kids. So I'm proud of that. Today, David and I will be both presenting. There's a lot of time, David, we always say he's the one who knows every detail of the legal procedure, and I'm the funky guy sometimes of here's what you do with the kid in some creative ways. It's, you know, he'll look at me and go, okay, yeah, Dan, do it. So there'll be times when one or the other of us is chiming in from the different roles. It's not that we're rude to each other, it's actually in the notes and in the plan of how we operate. So we really do get along very well. And, you know, it's there. But we're going to be going high speed today because we do have a lot to present to you. There's another presenter also, but all the time in the world, you want the rest of the day on the questions, as Yi said. So Yi, thank you so much to you and the Santa Clara County Office of Education. We've worked many times over the years with the county. We recognize a lot of the people in attendance, and we're thrilled to be able to do this. David, tell
Yes.
about you, and then take it away.
So my experience has been actually supervising attendance in school districts before I came to CDE. And I did that in Hemet, and I did that in Washington Unified School District, and I did that in Fontana Unified. But back in my day, the data that we were collected in data-driven attendance was just whether students were in the classroom or not in the classroom. And the data that you are collecting now is much more complicated than just whether a student is in a classroom or not, because you have so many different ways of delivering instruction. And the three-tiered approach to supervising attendance has changed radically this year. We've always had this work on prevention, improving the school climate, making school a welcoming place as the first tier. That's different when you have to do it online. Same thing with how you respond right away when a student starts to miss school or it stops participating. That's changed. And of course, your tier 3 intensive interventions for the students that have exhausted the school site resources, that's changed. So when we talk about a data-driven, three-tiered approach to supervising attendance, we're really talking about something new now this year. And so I'm really grateful to the Santa Clara County Office of Education and Dr. Yi Wan for having us on board, because we're supervising you for something, we're providing training for you to supervise something in a very different way than it's ever been done before. And I really appreciate all the hard work that you're doing out there in the school districts. Not only Santa Clara County, but all over the state, because when I looked at the list of participants, I saw we have people from many different counties in California that are here today. And I'm grateful that so many of you care so much about kids. It's like Dan said, we don't want any kids to be written off because they just aren't showing up. We want to find out what's going on and bring them back to school. So I'm going to do
And before you do that, Dave, did you mention also that, the PowerPoint has already been sent to you? If you're like me, I print things out and I write on it, so you don't have to take all the notes as being recorded. You can play it back all the times you want. Share it with your friends. There's some handouts that we'll be referring to there later that you'll be able to reference. And then our emails and our contact. And it's never an imposition. David and I, we answer our own phones, except we're working remotely these days. We answer our own email. And we're part of your teams. We're honored to be part of your teams. You're the ones on the ground with the kids. We get to talk to a kid or a parent if they call us, but otherwise, and the wonderful educators in all these other roles. So we are so proud to be part of your team as an addition, and you've let us have this role. But we're honored to be part of you. Okay, David.
Right, so the agenda for today, we're going to talk about your learning continuity and attendance plan, which is where you have your written procedures for your three-tiered approach to reducing chronic absenteeism. We're going to talk about Assembly Bill 2815, which is the legislation which established what are the duties for supervisors of attendance, and what kind of support services and interventions can supervisors of attendance provide for students with persistent school attendance or behavior problems. And for your to-do list, we hope that you will continue to identify or build your team both at the school level and at the district level to support these students. You're going to assess your own data, your own daily data that you collect on attendance to see all the patterns of who's missing school, different subgroups of kids. Of course, all school districts have to review and update their policies and procedures. That's part of your learning continuity and attendance plan. That learning continuity and attendance plan should include a three-tiered structure for re-engaging students in school. I'll talk a little bit at the end about focusing on the messaging to parents and students, because that's so important. The way that we communicate to parents And students during this time is going to be crucial in re-engaging children in school. So the indicator for distance learning, in-person instruction, and hybrid instruction is chronic absenteeism. This is a really crucial indicator because no instructional program will work if students aren't participating. And the chronic absenteeism indicator gives you a good way of finding out how many, if you have a dangerous lack of participation by students in their educational program. The California School Dashboard has been suspended for chronic absenteeism because of this emergency situation, but chronic absentee data is still going to be collected. And of course, it's going to be collected in CalPads, but it's also going to be collected by each school district. And all the school districts have different ways of analyzing their data and identifying which students and student groups need help. Just as a reminder, students are chronically absent if they are absent on 10% or more of the school days they were enrolled in any instructional program. Students may be enrolled in distance learning, hybrid models, or regular in-person instruction. Any participation during the day receives credit for that day of attendance. So you'll have students that are counted as present, but they may only be present because they did their schoolwork for that day, or they may be present because they checked in for a moment in the class and then they checked out, but they'll still be counted as present for that day. So being present for the day is just a really minimal standard. Of course, a lot of you will be collecting data that will tell you the degree of participation every day, not just whether they participated for a moment or not. The data is submitted on the student attendance summary for the California Longitudinal Pupil Achievement Data System, that's CalPads, and certified as part of the end of the year submission. This is really different from average daily attendance because average daily attendance for most districts is not an important data element in terms of funding anymore, because most districts are using the previous ADA for funding this year because of the emergency situation. So rather than looking at ADA, what we're really going to be looking at is chronic absentee rates, particularly subgroup chronic absentee rates. And those will be the primary indicator of success or failure on the learning continuity and attendance plans. The indicators are created at the district, school, and student group level. So it's going to be important to keep track of that data by district, by school, by student group, and requiring an analysis of chronic absenteeism data to determine how best to address attendance issues. How you address attendance issues for homeless students or foster youth may be very different than how you address it for other student groups. To support district and school efforts in addressing chronic absenteeism, legislation was enacted enhancing the role of the district supervisors of attendance. This legislation is still in effect regardless of the instructional modes selected in the LEA's Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan. Your job got harder, but the duties basically remain the same. Even though the statewide chronic absenteeism indicator was for grades kindergarten through grade 8, LEA should include goals for chronic absenteeism for students in grades 9 through 12 in their learning continuity plans. LEA should use their own period-by-period attendance tracking to identify chronic absenteeism issues in high schools as a means to improve graduation rates. So even though the student gets counted as present, if they're there at all during the day, it's really important to collect your data period by period for high school students, because of course if they're missing English or math or required course for graduation, that's an important piece of information that you have to act on. So cutting specific classes is still important because it will derail students from on-time graduation. And part of what we're trying to do is of course, improve our graduation rates. And that means intervening if students are ditching periods, whether or not they get counted as being absent for that day.
thing is, this is a feedback loop for us because if students are missing one class or not, they may be having a connectivity problem. That teacher may need support in the very difficult, absolutely new role that would, oh my, scare me, of how do you handle all this technology? So absenteeism as a flag, it could be the student, it could be us, but there's a barrier.
There's a barrier.
And we need to, at this time, find those flags as soon as possible and remedy it.
So AB 2815 is really landmark legislation focusing on addressing chronic absenteeism. This is the legislation that created the new duties for supervisors of attendance. And also, what's been in the laws a long time, since 1977, is this law that supervisors of attendance be certified by their counties for any districts with an average daily attendance of 1,000 or more. So you have this one law, 48245, which says that supervisors of attendance need to be certified by their county boards of education. And then you have this other law saying what are those duties that these people need to be able to implement. Education Code 48240 starts out by saying that every LEA must appoint a supervisor of attendance to supervise the attendance of pupils in the district or county. And the original duties for supervisors of attendance were pretty minimal. It just said that they had specific duties related to compulsory full-time education, truancy, work permits, compulsory continuation education, and opportunity schools, classes, and programs. And then AB 2815, since 2017, really greatly expanded the duties of supervisors of attendance to reflect the shift in focus from truancy rates to chronic absenteeism rates, and identify the new data-driven strategies and best practices of attendance supervision. Education Code 48240 specifies that it is the intent of the legislature that the supervisor of attendance promote a culture of attendance and establish a system to accurately track pupil attendance. That's really quite difficult right now with all these different instructional modes. So this is a very challenging duty that the legislature has given to supervisors of attendance. And the study is broken up into 5 different parts. The first part is to raise the awareness of school personnel, parents, guardians, caregivers, community partners, and local businesses of the effects of chronic absenteeism and truancy and other challenges associated with poor attendance. So this means, like right now, at the end of September, you should have been hopefully raising awareness through September Attendance Awareness Month. This is typically the time of year where letters get sent to parents reminding them about the importance of attendance. That's never been more important than it is right now, even though the attendance may be through online programs like Zoom. Then the second
David, if they look at Attendance Works, and we'll tell people that if you haven't thought of the ways to celebrate and year-round, attendance awareness, there are tremendous resources available out there. Also, I know Marion in LA has some tremendous resources that she puts out. So we can help you anytime. Say, but how do we do this? Or are there any ideas? Absolutely, talk to us. We'll share them. Give you these resources.
Absolutely, Attendance Works has done phenomenal work in this raising the awareness about attendance. The second duty is to identify and respond to grade level or pupil subgroup patterns of chronic absenteeism or truancy. And so some of your pupil subgroups are your racial and ethnic subgroups, like your African American students, your Pacific Islander students. There's definitely disproportionality in chronic absentee rates, and we have to identify what are the barriers to attendance for some of these racial and ethnic subgroups, and how can we make school a welcoming environment for them, and how can we facilitate their participation in the educational program. Then you have your other student subgroups like foster youth and homeless youth, migrant youth, English learners, and those are all groups that you should be paying attention to notice any barriers for attendance for those subgroups that might explain the disproportionality in the chronic absenteeism rates. And third duty is to identify and address factors contributing to chronic absenteeism and habitual truancy, including suspension and expulsion. Now, hopefully we don't have a lot of students being suspended or expelled during distance learning, but that can happen. But we have a lot of factors, particularly like Dan has talked about now with the technology that could be a barrier to attendance. There could be problems with, one computer in the home and 4 kids in the home. There can be problems with lack of connectivity. Those barriers we have to focus on right away, because those are barriers that we should be able to control for, and we don't want any kids in distance learning that aren't able to participate because of connectivity issues. But we know those kids exist. We need to identify them and give them the tools that they need for their education.
If there are students who are interfering, rather than suspending them from the access, there are restorative approaches to work with the kids. And if you need to brainstorm ideas on how we can still do restorative justice with kids who are interfering with the success of the learning community, please call me. Yeah, that's one of the things David and I especially do full workshops on that all the time. So I'd love to work with you.
Yeah, Dan does expert work on helping kids get restored to the educational environment. Number 4 is a really important duty for supervisors of attendance, is to ensure that pupils with attendance problems are identified as early as possible to provide applicable support services and interventions. And really that language in the Ed Code has really changed the way CalPADS does its exit codes, because they want to make sure that you don't exit a student until you've provided all the applicable support services and interventions that student needs. Okay. I don't know where that sound is coming from, but 5, evaluate the effectiveness. Sorry, that was my home phone going on.
I was going to say, I sent mine off. David and I have, I'm sure, presented over 150 conferences, everything, but I think 2 or 3 times I've had mine go off in the middle of my presentation. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, so back to this is a really important duty, to ensure that pupils with attendance problems are identified as early as possible to provide applicable support services and interventions. And that's why we want to make sure that kids aren't exited from a school enrollment until we've really identified that they're not in the school district, that means sometimes keeping them enrolled until you find out what the problem is. And then the 5th one here is evaluate the effectiveness of strategies implemented to reduce chronic absenteeism rates and truancy rates. And this is really important, because in your learning continuity and attendance plan, you do have already listed your strategies, but you also have to check to see if those strategies are being successful in reducing your chronic absenteeism rates. And if they're not, the learning continuity and attendance plan isn't something written in stone. It's something that you can change if it's not working. Of course, if you change it, you'll have to post the changes on your district website. But we don't want anyone to feel that just because their school board approved something in their learning continuity and attendance plan, that it can't be changed if they discover it's not working.
And the underlining principle here is, people say if the child is absent, oh no, what is going on wrong with this student? And we want everyone to think in terms of systems. Is this system doing something? I ask in other workshops to do, what is the student absent from? And if it's a mismatch in learning style and teaching style, which is a huge challenge right now, are there things going on in the student's life? Are there lack of cultural understanding? There are a lot of things that we need to work on at many times that can influence. So we have to look here on our end at the same time we're looking at the student. And this is a reminder.
So Assembly Bill 2815 further amended Education Code Section 48240 by adding 48240C, which specifies the potential tools, specific support services, and interventions that supervisors of attendance may use, including but not limited to any of the following. So these are actual interventions that are listed in the Education Code for supervisors of attendance. And the first one is probably the most significant, and it's part of the Education Code. A conference between school personnel, the pupil, parent, or guardian, and the pupil. And the Education Code requires you to try this intervention before a student is deemed an habitual truant. So you have to make that conscientious effort to hold a meeting with the parent, the student, and the child. And of course, that conference can be a phone conference, it could be a Zoom conference. It doesn't have to be an in-person conference. Second, promoting co-curricular and extracurricular activities that increase pupil connectedness to school, such as tutoring, mentoring, the arts, service learning, or athletics. Now, some of these are going to be harder to do during distance learning. Certainly, athletics is going to be harder to do, but looking for those things that can create connectedness to school that may not be academic or that may enhance academics. Third, recognizing pupils who achieved excellent attendance or demonstrate significant improvement in attendance. And this is where all these different kinds of award programs can come in, and raffles, and recognizing classes with improved attendance, schools with improved attendance. That's all part of this number 3 under the duties or tools of supervisors of attendance.
There also, and we need to work with all of our educators, you know, the concept of a draft. When you're writing a paper, and David and I have both done enough teaching of English, you know, you have the first draft, but there's an expectation you may have to improve and write a second draft and a third draft. And I've seen posted actually at a juvenile hall school I visited in Utah. They had all the drafts leading up to an A paper, from maybe oh my to wow, that's incredibly good. But oh my was how it started. But when we get to attendance and especially behavioral interventions, it's figuratively and sometimes literally, you come up to a student, people do, you're snapping a finger in a student's face, leaving it hanging there like a fist, you know, it just feels so powerful. And we expect perfect remedy after that moment. And you will be good for now on, and you will always attend, and you will never misbehave again, or else. You know, let's understand that concept of the draft, and a first draft and second draft, and honor improvement, and help them chart their improvement. And respect that, and have their classmates recognize the improvement and the effort that went into that improvement, not just expecting them to go from the really sloppy first draft to perfection instantly.
That's
it's
right.
not a new concept in teaching.
No, and we see it, and it applies to attendance because we want to see improvement in attendance. So sometimes you don't expect a student to be engaged completely at school, right? You know, from 0 to 100% engagement. If you start seeing improvement, you want it to accent the positive, reinforce the positive, and hopefully continue to see improvement. Another support service that's specified in the statute is referral to a school nurse, school counselor, school psychologist, school social worker, or other pupil support personnel for case management and counseling. So this is something that you need to make sure your teachers know they can do. It's something that the supervisors of attendance can do. A lot of times we're going to be having kids with health problems or health concerns. The school nurse is vital, and today more than ever right now we need to work, collaborate with our school nurses, school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers. These are people that have specific expertise that can really be helpful in re-engaging kids in school. And a lot of times you're going to be using people that are not credentialed, but are classified people who can be very helpful. A lot of districts are using their campus supervisors to call families when the children are not attending, and they can help support the credentialed people, especially since their roles have kind of switched. I know a lot of places even are using their bus drivers to reach out to families when they're not attending, and to sort of case management with the professional student support staff. Fifth, collaboration with child welfare services, law enforcement, courts, public health care agencies or government agencies, or mental health and oral health providers to receive necessary services. Sometimes the school can link those families to those necessary services. Sometimes it has to be the SARB that links the family to those necessary services. We just had an excellent presentation at the state SARB meeting about how youth court and peer courts can sometimes be used to reconnect a student to school. Number 6, collaborating with school study teams, guidance teams, school attendance review teams, or other intervention-related teams to assess the attendance or behavior problem in partnership with the pupil and his or her parents, guardians, or caregivers. So this just stresses the importance of the team. You need to have a school level team, and you need to have a district level team. The school level team gets the first shot at the problem. They work intensely with the family. They make a very conscientious effort to do everything they can. But if the school level team is not successful, then you have this third, more intensive intervention team that at the district level, which would normally be the SARB, that would provide that linking to services that was not able to be done at the school level. In schools with significantly higher rates of chronic absenteeism, identify barriers to attendance that may require school-wide strategies rather than case management. And this is what, Yi and I were talking about earlier, is sometimes it's a school climate issue that needs to be addressed, or a classroom climate issue that needs to be addressed. And that's something where case management of individual students doesn't work, but you need to do something to change the environment of those students. And sometimes you can find out what the problems are through what they call pulse surveys. We had a very good presentation by Kelvin Education about how they can survey students online to determine what might be the barriers to attendance. Eighth one is an important one to remember, is sometimes the supervisor of attendance will have to make a referral for a comprehensive psychosocial or psychoeducational assessment, including for the purposes of creating an individualized education program for the student with exceptional needs, or sometimes the supervisor of attendance will need to refer a student for a Section 504 assessment because the student qualifies as a qualified handicapped person. So definitely there can be special education or 504 barriers to attendance that need to be addressed. And then if nothing works at the school level, then you have to consider referral to a school attendance review board established by the Ed Code, and that can be done even during these times of distance learning. That's an available option. Sometimes the SARB will have a meeting with the family. Sometimes the SARB will meet without the family to define what kind of intensive intervention is going to be helpful for the student. In some counties, you have a truancy mediation program that can take referrals for the cases that are not able to be solved at the district level. Interventions may be modified for instructional modes offered in each LEA's learning continuity and attendance plan. Written procedures may further define the roles and interventions used by each LEA's supervisor of attendance. So, the more detailed the learning continuity and attendance plan can be about who does what to supervise attendance in the district, the more helpful the learning continuity and attendance plan can be. So the to-do list here, just as a reminder, to identify and build your team both at the school level and the district level. Assess your data by subgroup, both ethnic and racial subgroups, and subgroups like foster youth and homeless youth. Review and update policies and procedures for your school district. That can mean updates to your school board policy. California School Boards Association has excellent sample policies for attendance supervision, which they've recently updated, that should be considered by school districts. And then, of course, it's important to implement a 3-tiered system. For tier 1, your prevention, your universal supports for all students. How are you going to make the school climate better for all students? Tier 2, what early intervention are you going to do at the school site level to identify the problem as soon as it emerges so it can be solved more easily? And then tier 3, what are you going to do for your intensive interventions when the school site interventions are exhausted? So take it away, Dan.
Yeah, and then one thing, presentation we're not doing now because we don't have an extra few hours, but David and I call our pyramid scheme. You've seen these multi-tiered systems of support, and you see one for academics, and then you see another triangle that's on attendance, and there's another triangle on behavior, and there's another triangle on mental health, and there's another triangle on, for some students, transportation challenges or support for parents. And what you do, if you take the triangles that fit for this student and you link them together 3-dimensionally, because they're all about this one child, it forms a pyramid. And you place that pyramid on a base of this student's sense of identity, but you find the answer to one side of the pyramid maybe on another one. We know there's cases where a girl is not doing well, or a boy, or they aren't doing well academically because they're not coming to school on a regular basis. So it's an absenteeism. And we find out that the student is being bullied, and the student's being bullied because she has bad breath. And the bad breath is because she's not getting dental care, and it's not and that's due to a lack of access, whether it's financial or something else. And we have to look at, when you're doing your 3 tiers, you may need to look for the answer on a whole different multi-tiered system triangle. But that's another workshop. Okay, so we need to build your team. One of the slides we often have is it's all about students learning. We're absolutely committed to students learning, but students don't do that on their own. So it's about the teacher teaching the student. Got it. David and I are classroom teachers. We have been. And it's about our being able to match our teaching skills, we hope, to the students' strengths and abilities. Got it. But it's about not all on the teacher. Oh my, right now especially, it's on the administrator to provide the support to that teacher and the supportive team members in the different roles that many of you fill, so that the teacher is able to focus and succeed with a job, and then the student can learn, and we involve the family and others on this team. So you need a very comprehensive team. Next, please. So you have the school, you have the district level. The supervisor of attendance is the one who is looking for the presence of this team and saying, who do we need, as David said, to step up? You may need someone from outside, as David said. We have this wonderful County Office of Education where you have people with additional resources who may know who in another district has really faced your kind of challenge. They can link you and help you provide mentors also. You can look to what's in the learning continuity plan, the attendance goal. We'll talk about some funding opportunities a bit later. Add to the team, you may need to move it up to a SART or a SARB to have all these different perspectives of expertise. It's keep bringing in people till you come up with an answer. It's not, I didn't come through with it. I hate to rely on the little point at the top of my little head for all the answers. Sometimes I have them, but others I'm networked, or I'm networked to others who are networked, and we come up with the answer. So look at your data. Your data will tell you it's not, there's reason to celebrate, there's progress, but you're also going to look for pockets within that data that are going to indicate that something might not be going right. And again, sometimes it's our own practice. When you get to suspension and expulsion, suspension is when we've told a student, and is more in regular times, but you can have access to anyone and everyone in the world but us educators. And so my push has always been, can we help them regroup and hunker down with them? Maybe not in the classroom. Maybe it's not the teacher at that time who can conveniently just step aside and stop teaching all the other students, but do we have people who can hunker down with that student? So you're looking at assessing your data in the information system. You need to track this carefully. It's not annually. Graduation statistics are interesting. They're powerful, but it's way down the line and then it's too late. The student's gone. We can't wait till that. We can't wait annually. We can't wait monthly. For some students, they need to be monitored weekly. You're going to hear about check in, check out, from Stephanie. So are there tools on there? And then CalPADS was not meant to just be early chronic absenteeism, early warning system. Again, it's who needs assistance are the patterns, so you can ask for others to support you, as David and I are honored to be able to maybe offer you some help now. And we'd certainly be willing to be helping you and ye with all the resources within the county. What you need, we need to bring together to help you. These are challenging times. Next, please. So assess the data. There is absenteeism data. There is suspension data in CalPADS. It's been collected by CalPADS. It's collected through DataQuest. Find the chronic absenteeism data, suspension data. Look at your level. You can compare to other counties, other districts, other schools, but also you can break it down by populations within the populations. You can look at racial and ethnic statistics. You can look at foster youth. You can look at special ed, homeless. You can also challenge your own expectations. One thing for me, I point out is migrant populations, people say, oh, wow, they have huge challenges. They're going to have really high chronic absenteeism. The chronic absenteeism for migrant students is substantially lower than people predict if you don't understand the culture, because this is a culture so committed to the success of their children and their students. So it's feedback to us. Sometimes we're surprised, wait a minute, there aren't disparities or as much, or, oh my, then I need to look if there are overall disparities, there's a system issue, that's something we need to be supporting that isn't succeeding right now. Next, please. And then, oh wait, go back one more day, I'm sorry. Training teachers, the ongoing professional development, but also we have to talk to, David and I talked to the people in teacher education, administrative credential programs. This is what they need to be bringing up leaders and people ready to step in and provide the supports. So, our new people sometimes come in with advantages we didn't have in our training. I know I got my credential. David did a tremendously long time ago. Next, please. There are patterns in the statewide data. 1 in 10 traditional schools, public schools, in California have nearly 20% of their students who are chronically absent. 1 in 5 traditional high schools in California, 1 in 5, 20%, based on daily attendance, not period by period, more students are chronically absent. And by the way, being from the Educational Options Office and leading educational options schools or programs, we use a traditional instead of the word comprehensive. Because educational option schools, we get the kids who are not succeeding, and we have to be even more comprehensive in coming up. What didn't work? What were people not able to do within the structure of traditional? What can we do that's not only on the whole child, but this specific whole child? We have a little more room to operate, and we hope this very special focus. So we're comprehensive, said with pride. The largest number of traditional schools with chronic absenteeism, 20% or more, are elementary schools. Don't assume this is a high school problem only with those kids with attitude and they're all cutting and that's the issue. It's especially high though, I said, in alternative education settings, because we have the schools who come to us with the greatest needs where others said we're just not able to work with them as successfully as we need within the traditional setting. And while we have maybe a more stringent focused approach due to our setup in calculating chronic absence, but we have to have the students get to know us. It takes time for us to know them. We have to develop relationships so that they feel comfortable, trusting, and our work has time to be effective in getting them to be engaged. Next, please. Rural Northern California counties, very high percentage of students with 20% or higher rates. I know one of the challenges are that I just talked to someone in far Northern California, convincing people how beautiful it is up there, but it's sparse and there are great distances between places. And some of the activities you might want aren't as widespread, but it's beautiful. But there are fewer schools and some are having higher level of chronic absence. The county offices, partner agencies can talk to each other in regional approaches. There's small school district associations. The smaller counties are working together. Pull your resources, pull your expertise, ask someone else, wow, you're doing so well. You made it through the barriers. Can you spare us some of the struggle and help us get through them more quickly? We're each other's team. Southern California, Central Valley, you know, they have the largest student populations. Obviously, you have more schools, more students, you have more of the chronic absenteeism, but again, the largest number of 20% or more. We have to look, but maybe we look at comparative data between similar districts and schools, and also look in your resource plan and your learning continuity plan. Is the emphasis where it really needs to be now, or is it based in practices that used to be? Is the money backing up and providing the strong resources? Are you going to your community and asking more, because these students are part of the community? Restorative practices, restoring the health of the community and every member of the community, each member, including each student, is an important, necessary, needed member of the community for now and for the future. Next, please. Oh, you got it. So the statewide data, race and ethnicity groups statewide, there are disparities. 10% of students are chronically absent statewide, but in American Indian populations, nearly 21%. African American, nearly 19%. Pacific Islander, 15.5%. So we have to look at times at or constantly at the overall school climate, as David mentioned. Do students in their literature read about students who look and sound like them, like themselves? I know if you look on the cover of the Freedom Writers diary, there is Tony with the curly hair, and Tony said, you know, until I met Ms. Gurrell, I never read a book with a farm worker kid in it. And now he's a nurse, fully certified nurse, been one for a long time. But you know, you have to see yourself in there. So we look at these grade levels, and then the largest number of chronically absent students are Latino. Of course, we have the largest, it's one of the largest population groups student, but the highest levels are often in kindergarten, 14%, and then high school, 15.4%. And while kindergarten, and for students who are 18 or over, is not compulsory in California, or kindergarten for those under age 6, it's not compulsory. Once they are 6, it is. It's still chronic absenteeism when they're not there. And the danger is that you establish a habit of deciding on a daily basis, should be a school day for me or not? I don't know. Maybe I should go, maybe I shouldn't. Should I get my kid there or not? It's not compulsory. It is tremendously important for these students so they don't fall behind, and I'll talk about it later, so they support their peers in the learning. They're part of a community of learners in the team. So even if it's not compulsory, it's still urgent, and yes, those students count in your data. Other student groups, so high chronic absenteeism, foster youth with their tremendous background of challenge, 25.1%, homeless, tremendous challenge, again, climate change fire calamities that are just growing year after year in California, disrupting whole communities. Students with disabilities, higher chronic absenteeism, partly because the disability can be limiting at times. Have we adjusted what we do to accommodate them? Do we bring in students on a computer now as you're participating so they can be there participating fully? We couldn't do that when I was a kid. And also it's the stigma that students in all these areas still face. that drives them away in that school climate. So different groups, different strategies, different interventions to support our youth with challenges. Every time you see a high absenteeism rate, that means flags go up, there are barriers somehow. We need to uncover them and do our best to come up with an answer to address them. David?
Good, thank you, Dan. So current conditions caused by COVID-19 are likely to inflame all these chronic absentee rates. So when we're looking at these different subgroup chronic absentee rates and how high they are, what's happening right now is probably increasing all those chronic absenteeism rates because we now are encountering barriers to attendance that we've never had to deal with before. Supervisors of attendance face a greater challenge than ever before to reduce chronic absentee rates for all student groups. Education Code 43504F requires each LEA to develop written procedures for tiered re-engagement strategies for all pupils for more than 3 school days or 60% of the instructional days in the school week. So when it's talking about tiered re-engagement strategies, you can have specific re-engagement strategies for specific student groups. Also, you need to review and update your policies and procedures. Clearly, we can't have the same policies and procedures before COVID-19 and after COVID-19. And AB 2815 does provide a framework for what are your overall goals. Just sort of reviewing that, it says, in performing his or her duties, the supervisor of attendance promotes a culture of attendance and establishes a system to accurately track pupil attendance. This is going to have to be done differently than it's ever been done before. And also, what has to be done differently is how we go about ensuring that pupils with attendance problems are identified as early as possible to provide applicable support services and interventions. The duties are still the same, but how we go about accomplishing these duties has been modified. A system to accurately track pupil attendance should be based on district policies and procedures, tracking student attendance, which includes policies for when to enroll and exit students. I'm going to talk a little bit about enrolling and exiting students in CalPADS. Collectively, we are responsible for helping to ensure all students attend school, and so district policies should include procedures for tracking pupils who they expected to attend but never showed up. And of course, a lot of districts are working on that right now. They had students they expected to show up that they pre-enrolled but haven't shown up at the beginning of the school year, and we don't want to lose these kids. This helps ensure that pupils with attendance problems are identified as early as possible to provide applicable support services and interventions. And a lot of people are addressing this in their learning continuity intense plans. Who's going to be following up right away on the kids that were expected to attend at the beginning of the school year and are missing? The CalPADS enrollment start and exit date definitions have been modified to support efforts to ensure that pupils with attendance problems are identified as early as possible to provide applicable support services and interventions. This is especially important for students in distance learning who may not have the right equipment or connectivity to participate in distance learning. Absent codes should indicate why students are missing any educational option. The CalPADS enrollment start date. The first date a student was expected to attend a particular school for a period of enrollment. So the previous definition specified that you could start enrollment based on the first date that the student generated average daily attendance. Unfortunately, we thought that that definition allowed kids to be missed because we have students that are having attendance problems and they don't show up at the beginning of the school year. So by using the expected date of attendance, we can more easily track students who may be missing at the beginning of the school year and who actually should be in school. Much work must be done before school begins to ensure attendance after the enrollment date. So most of you are already in session. You are already searching after those kids that went missing at the beginning of the school year. The CalPADS enrollment exit date also supports this effort to find out what is happening to kids who didn't show up. it says the last date that a student was expected to attend within a specific enrollment period. That's for the, this should be the last day that the student was expected to attend the school for an enrollment period, unless the student is an habitual truant. Now there's special procedures now that you have to follow when, before you exit a student who may be an habitual truant. The date the student was referred to the local or county school attendance review board can be the date where you can exit a student. And what that does is it prevents you from exiting a student who may be in your district before you've referred them to refer them to SAR. If the student cannot be located, the date a full investigation as to the whereabouts of the student was completed can be used for your exit date from CalPADS. For the student who was enrolled in the prior year, was pre-enrolled for the current year, and who does not show up at the beginning of the school year as expected, the exit date may be within the first few days of school as the school attempts to determine the student's whereabouts. So what we're trying to do in the CalPADS system is make sure that there's this effort to find out what happened to a student before they're exited. With this understanding of the general policy direction, review district policies and procedures for enrolling, exiting students, and maintaining using attendance data. Policies, procedures should cover when to enroll and exit students, students enrolled in the prior year and who are expected to return but who do not show up. What you should have specific policies about how are you going to investigate what happened to those students. Also for students matriculating from a feeder school who are expected to enroll but who did not show up. So a kid that was in your elementary school but didn't show up in the middle school, you need to have a procedure to make sure what happened to that student before you exit them from CalPADS. Students who are chronically absent during the year, what are your procedures for those students who you know are in the district but who are chronically absent during the school year? Okay. Students who become truant during the school year, what are your procedures that you must follow before those students are exited from CalPADS? Procedures must include verification of current contact information for each enrolled pupil, daily notification to parents or guardians of absences, a plan for outreach from the school to determine pupil needs, including connection needs for distance learning, as well as health and special services as necessary. When feasible, there should be a plan for transitioning students back to in-person or hybrid learning. So the intent of that language is that if a student is not attending in distance learning, they should be the first students that are put back to in-person or hybrid learning when that becomes available. Best practices for the beginning of the school year. Identify students who were enrolled in the prior year and who are expected to show up, but who do not show up. These students would have been exited in CalPADS with an E155 after documented attempts to locate the students. Examine your current policies and practices. Like I said before, the California School Boards Association has some excellent sample policies that you can consider for your district. Your current policy should answer the question, are these students automatically enrolled in your student information system and uploaded to CalPADS? Are they pre-enrolled? Pre-enrolling students from one school to another school helps to make sure that students don't get lost in the transition. When pre-enrolled students do not show up, do you attempt to locate these students? What exit code and date do you use to exit these students? Unless the school district has been notified by the parent guardian that the student will not be returning, upload all enrollments to CalPADS. So if you're not sure that whether or not a student is going to be continuing in your district, continue to enroll them into CalPADS until you find out. Don't assume that a student has moved. For students who do not show up in the first few days of school, develop a means to track these students in your student information system. Some school districts have a special list to keep track of kids that are no-shows that doesn't impact their scheduling, so that they still fill up classes, but they keep track of students who are missing so that they can be brought back into the system as quickly as possible. If these students are exited from CalPads but maintaining your student information system in order to track them, they should be exited in CalPads using E140. E140 is the code for a dropout. And that code can be changed if another reason is determined. There's a flash update that CDE recently sent out, this flash update 191, and that talks about how you can change the exit code if you find out that a student has moved to another California public school. Conduct a full and impartial investigation as to the whereabouts of the students. An investigation may include searching CalPads, phoning, using social media, driving by the residents, etc. Local policies practices should include a documented procedure for conducting a full and impartial investigation. In fact, there can even be a federal audit if schools are found not to be doing a full and impartial investigation for students who are missing from school. If the student is found to have transferred to another LEA, the LEA may, but is not required, to change the E155 exit to a T160 transfer exit. CalPads will not count the E140 exit as a dropout if there's a subsequent enrollment. So that's one of the good things about CalPads is if the student's ID number shows up in another school district and you thought the student was a dropout, then it can be changed by CalPads. If the student is found to have transferred to a private school or left the state or country and required documentation exists that supports the exit, then the exit the student with the appropriate exit code. So students sometimes can be transferred to private schools and they don't have to count as dropouts. But that student won't be automatically found in CalPads if it's a private school, since CalPads doesn't include private school students. One of the things we're finding right now is a lot of parents are transferring their kids to their home private schools using private school affidavits. And the procedure for that is to let the parent transfer, but then you still have to verify that the parent filed the private school affidavit. Because in the Ed Code 48222, you have to verify that the parent has filed a private school affidavit. Otherwise, the student will be considered a truant.
And when you're transferring to another district, a student is transferring anywhere, it's really important to try to confirm actual attendance, not just have a paper transfer. And this is not just due to current pandemic times. It's been an old issue where a student is said to be transferring and the family has said it, or it's reported by some districts, I'm sure not yours, where they say, this is a difficult student. Hey, I'll send them as a transfer to you and you send yours to me. And then they're not on our records as dropouts. What we really like to see in child welfare and attendance is, did the student actually show up and participate for at least one day? And I would love to have that be the standard, not just registered as enrolled, so they're gone, but actually participated, because if they aren't, that's the big issue. This student is not in school participating. Red flags should go off and people need to investigate. And you almost want to have within the computers, some of these laws were written before we had all these wonderful computer systems. It should be very simple to have a feedback loop that says all clear, the student has intended, back to the student where the school, to the district where the school was, I can't talk, it's in the morning, where the student was attending. So follow up on that and document all of your efforts. It's federal law to document efforts to make sure students are engaged in school.
Yeah, and if the student is found still living in the district but is not attending, refer the student to a SAR. If the student cannot be located, leave the E140 exit as is. All absences in CalPads must be categorized as either excused or not excused. So every district has its own unique coding system for different types of excused absences. What we collect at the state level is just whether the absent is it categorized as being excused or not excused.
And
Also,
David, before you go to the number of days, also, students who are under 6 years old but enrolled in school, kindergarten, or over 18 without the compulsory ed, if they're not attending, but we have them in some way, you can still bring them to a SARB for that extra expertise. They can't have legal action taken against them for a violation of compulsory education law, but that's so rare for SARBs to be pursuing those approaches anyway. The idea is, here's a student who is not engaged in school, who is expected to be engaged in school, and you need the level of help of a SARB to bring together all these other agency and other experts. So SARBs are open to any of these students with the attendance and behavior challenges.
and all school districts and special day classes must offer 180 days of instruction per year. Charter schools must offer 175 days in fiscal year 2020-21. The same policies and practices may be used at the beginning of a school year for those matriculating students you expect to enroll from feeder schools, but who do not show up. However, entering kindergartners and ninth graders who do not show up may be exited with N470, no show, as families of kindergartners and students entering high school often shop around for schools. If a student never enrolled in the school, the N470 exit prevents the student from being included in the school's four-year graduation cohort. 180 instructional minutes is required in TK kindergarten, 230 instructional minutes in grades 1 to 3 inclusive, 240 instructional minutes in grades 4 to 12 inclusive, 180 instructional minutes for students in grades 11 to 12 who are enrolled part-time in classes for CSU or UC for academic credit, or who are enrolled in community colleges for academic credit. So we've changed the instructional minutes, but we still have instructional minutes that have to be accounted for in the student's attendance.
And this is through either the seat time or through the work equivalent to that in distance learning, but the student should each day be receiving in an expectation of work of a minimum of these many instructional minutes. And by the way, as a community day school guy, those interviewer, I know some of you probably community day schools, the minimum day normally for community day schools is 360 minutes, but under SB 98 during this pandemic, it's reduced to the numbers by the grade level of the student within the community day school. We don't have many kindergartners in the state. Every year I get a couple, 2 or 3. 1 through 3, there's more certainly than 4 to 12. It goes up to 240. On the other hand, continuation was at 180, and it still is. In opportunity ed schools, it had a minimum day of 180, but that's not in effect in SB 98. So an opportunity student might be required to have at least 240 minutes. So this is SB 98 minutes. And the exceptions are there in the law. The only exception is continuation education, where it's still 180 minutes, which is also great, even if they are in the high school ages.
So the best practices during the school year: implement Tier 1 prevention strategies as part of the school's culture. This is everything that you can do to be welcoming to the student and to the parent. Establish procedures for tracking chronic absent students, suspended students, and truants on a daily basis, and follow up with Tier 2 early intervention strategies when it appears they are starting to have attendance issues. And you're going to hear more detailed information about Tier 2 interventions today. If the district school does not have an attendance dashboard to monitor attendance on a daily basis, seek one out. E450 has been changed from pre-K to 6th grade exit to pre-K exit. So we've got a different exit code now to distinguish between students who are under compulsory education and are exited versus students who are not under compulsory education and are exited from school. When should an LEA disenroll a student who has been enrolled in attending school and then becomes habitually truant and appears to have dropped out? So what do you do when the student is still in the district and they're not attending, and when can you exit them? Follow the statutory steps for addressing truancy. Identify that the student is truant, notify the parent guardian, hold a meeting, and then take one of the following actions. If the whereabouts of the student is known, refer to STARB, exit the student with E140 truant, no known enrollment using the STARB referral date as the exit date. If after a full investigation as specified in local policies has been conducted and the student cannot be located, exit the student with E140 using the date the full investigation was completed as the exit date. And if you want to get some more detailed information, you can refer to the CalPADS update flash 132 for disenrolling students. Should you use exit code E400? E400 should only be used for students who are 18 years of age or older. Those students can legally drop out of school. Compulsory attendance laws apply to all students ages 6 to 18. Therefore, LEA should always refer truants to local or county STARBs or fully investigate the whereabouts of students who appear to have dropped out before disenrolling those students. How do we exit independent study students who do not fulfill their contract? Okay. If a student enrolled in a school under an independent study contract does not fulfill his or her contract, the student should return to his original school or be referred to another school program. So we shouldn't be keeping kids in independent study if they're not completing their work. The Ed Code says that you have to have a meeting with the family to determine if independent study is the right option for the student. And if it's not, then you need to put the student into a classroom instruction.
But with independent study, and as a former state lead for independent study, you might be, in normal conditions, be checking in with that student only once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever it says in the master agreement. The SB 98 daily check-in with that student includes students who are served through independent study. To have a daily contact. In some ways, it's to be sure there is connectivity with that student. It's a safety concern, I think, but it's the law. And you have to be reporting that the documentation for the daily check-ins includes independent study students, even though the contract has a fuller review and meeting with the teacher to review the work based on the timetable in that contract.
So whenever a student is exited independent study, there should be contact with the receiver school. So you want to work with the receiver school to make sure that the student does actually show up back to the regular classroom instruction if it's available. The student may then be exited with a T160. However, the student fails to show up at the other California public school, the school that exited the student may be charged with a dropout. So that includes students that are on independent study. And the CalPADS is considering a special X code to be used for students who are exited from independent study and don't go back to classroom instruction. So we could distinguish how many of those students there are. Also, this is a reminder that distance learning and independent studies are not interchangeable. As Dan was just saying, those you still have to keep a daily connection with the students in independent study programs during this time. Okay, 50. Okay, one more. If a student has a full day of absence, but then attended a Saturday school attendance recovery program to recoup that absence, which enables us to claim DNA, does the Saturday school attendance count as a day attended, or will the full day's absence count as a day absent? So right now, if you're in distance learning, you can still have a Saturday school. You could do like a virtual Saturday school for kids that need to make up work, but you won't get average daily attendance funding for it because you're not getting average daily attendance now in most cases. If you're one of those rare school districts that is increasing, you could get Saturday school apportionment, but most places that are doing Saturday school now, it doesn't get counted as regular school attendance. It doesn't affect your chronic absentee rate, but it can be a useful strategy for giving students extra time to make up work. The California definition of a chronic absentee actually excludes counting Saturday or Sunday as a school attendance day. The calculation is based on the number of regular school days a student is enrolled, and Saturday and Sunday school day attendance doesn't count in the chronic absentee rate. Develop written procedures for tiered re-engagement strategies for students that are absent from distance learning may include weekend classes. So you can have that as your strategy, even though it won't reduce your chronic absentee rate, and it won't provide you extra funding during distance learning. Okay, Dan.
So the 3-tier systems to reduce chronic absenteeism. Let's go. The first tier is prevention. That's having a school climate that talks about how important this student's participation is, and that we're here to help you because we realize there are barriers, and we have knowledgeable people and resources we hope to be able to identify if you run into barriers to deal with those barriers. But the learning is important, and we'll talk more about that. Tier 2 is when interventions are needed. They're earlier, they're less time and resource consuming, we hope, but we want to be on them and on top of them, not say, well, we'll just see how this develops. I tell people I'm Mr. Zero Tolerance, and people go, Dan, you're supposed to be this caring guy you don't write off kids and all. Tolerating is allowing something to continue that isn't the way you think it should be, and you think that's important. Zero tolerating doesn't suggest punishment. Zero means no, I don't tolerate it. If something isn't working with this student, I don't tolerate this student not being engaged in learning. I need to intervene, but it doesn't have to be punitive at all. Zero tolerance doesn't suggest that. It means be a professional, hunker down with a student, a family, find out, ask them what is in the way of this learning, and bring all your allies together to intervene successfully before you get to a need for tier 3, which is an intensive intervention. So to improve the overall intention in prevention, again, overall intents, prevent chronic absence, monitor the data. You're going to hear us talk about monitor that data to see if there are any trends, if there are any patterns that affect groups of students, which indicates that within the system, there's something lacking with some level of consistency that we really need to work on, because it's something that the system then owes these children, these learners. What can we ever bring to bear to remove those barriers? Okay, we create positive messaging, including our dedication, to educate, engage a community as well as the students with an awareness of school attendance, especially, hey, it's still September and Attendance Awareness Month, but we have Attendance Awareness Year this year and every year. But when we go into alternative education, like community day schools, I specialize in the kids who've had serious challenges. I tell the students, this isn't punishment. Your district or your county office are so dedicated to kids with your levels of challenges, and when the traditional framework didn't work, they established a whole school to make sure they could better meet your needs. You are that important. The traditional didn't match with you, got it, rather than send you somewhere else and say, we just can't have you. We say, no, you're that important. We need you to succeed. Your community, our community needs you to succeed, and they're pouring in special resources and specialty experts to help you even more. See how important you are, instead of, you're evil, we hate you. Don't do that. But the positive messaging, and then we're going to say again, recognize good and improved attendance of schools. We're doing the job better in our classes, including individual students. Those of you who've had the challenge of educating students through distance learning, oh my, it's getting less difficult. Now you've had more time to finally learn some of this tech, which is not my strength or David's strength. You're getting more familiar. We have reached more, but not all of the students with access issues to the technology, but we're doing better. We're finding we've had time to learn from those who have come up with very creative ways to meet the challenges. We've exported their wisdom. They've offered to mentor others so they wouldn't have to take so many stumbling steps as the now experts did. So we're all working more as a team. David and I send out resources. We'll talk about that. I have a listserv. David and I send out stuff all the time. All these webinars, some of you here today, you can't go to all of them, but you might catch up with one later, or this webinar is being recorded for later viewing. But look at the importance, and then again, here you have to have a positive and engaging school climate, and sometimes as listening through the ears of your students and your families, how do they listen? What are their contexts? What are their challenges? Can we listen to them, ask them if they have answers? Can we frame what we say within their worlds and their experiences and their identities? Then they'll engage. Early intervention, if they miss 10% or more, this is chronic, it's serious, that's a lot of time. We need to notify them the consequences of poor school attendance. It's not, here is how we are going to get after you and we can hurt you. But the consequences, and I'll talk about that in some slides coming up, affecting your learning and the learning of your peers. Use a very personalized early outreach. There was a question I saw in the chat. Yes, home visits now, even with some of the distancing protections, can be very effective, and you get a sense of the home and you sense the context, although there are students that when you're doing distance learning on cameras may not be comfortable because they have some concerns about you seeing the conditions in which they live, which are very challenging. But can you talk and you can say, you know, I'm looking for the strengths, I'm looking for the positives when I'm looking. Build that positive tone. Meet with the student, meet with the family at school, or go to them, develop plans for overcoming barriers to regular attendance, and offer a mentor or buddy at school. But also when you're talking to family, in one of the presentations we do, sometimes I have a slide that says parent night, and then I click and there's a big cross, it's crossed out because I don't like parent night. And people say, Dad, you're the state guy, I hate it too. And I said, that's not what I said. I don't like parent night. Because some kids are so literal. In families, the word parent, and some kids don't have parents who are available or present or effective, or maybe we schedule that parent night in a family with 4 kids and it's one parent who can't be simultaneously in 4 places. I can't. You want to have a reach out to, are there other key adults in your life who care about you? When you meet, and we have trouble now reaching families who have flip phones that no longer work. You want to ask, with the emergency card, you have the name of the person who legally has the authority to take action. Got it. But you can also ask the student, are there other key adults in your life? They may be other relatives. They may be like family, but not fully family in the community. Older siblings, anyone that we can reach out to wrap around the student or access them to maybe tie us to others who might be less threatening also than some of us in our official capacity. We're trying to reach and wrap around the student. So go beyond this parent, which to a literal person could be very limiting, and see if we can expand our reach and be a whole community, okay? And then the student realizes they have a community team. This is about being a team. Look how many are on your team. Not having them realize you're lacking someone who could have been really important. That's not what we need right now. Although David and I are trainers in mental health first aid, we need to also understand trauma and challenges for our youth. Could be part of why they're not there. For students missing 20%, oh, those challenges that are more intensive. This is an oh my level, as I said. Intensive case management, how many experts in which roles are needed to identify and respond to the barriers. If they're persistent and you're struggling, Bump it to a different level. Take it to the county office and say, who do you know? Yi Wan, yeah, you, Dr. Wan, who do you know? You got resources, please. The SARB, by law, we've got a dozen more category of expertise to come to the table on behalf of helping this youth and their family. If you don't have a SARB, contact the county office. David mentioned it's a chair of the state SARB. I get to sit at his right hand, but he's the chair. We'll talk about model SARBs, those who, it isn't just to pat them on the head and say, you are so wonderful. No, they have agreed to model, be models, and mentor. That's part of the commitment in the application to be a model SARB, that you have to commit to being a mentor to others to help them get through the challenges more quickly and come up with answers. So we've got people to help you. We can help you create a SARB, and we'll link you to fabulous, fabulous educators who I know from outside Santa Clara. There's some on this webinar right now. I looked, I know you're watching, and some of you are tremendous presenters and workshops just like this one. Thank you. See, we learn from each other. We learn new nuances. So if you currently participate in a SARB, you said there are model SARBs are out, apply to be a model SARB. The application, if you are fabulous but not yet officially identified as such, we're going to be sending it out very soon. The 2019-20 scoring rubric are available online right now to give you an idea, but we're modifying it to better represent how to be an effective SARB during the challenges of COVID and distance learning, which I always say with, oh my, but it's like learning continuity plans. We have to be up to date in taking new and special measures and then sharing the developing wisdom throughout the state so that you're not alone in helping a student with a challenge. Next, please. Messaging. I have mentioned messaging. Here we go. In AB 2815, it is the first duty specified for you who are going to be supervisors of attendance to raise the awareness of school personnel, parents, guardians, caregivers, see how the list keeps going, community partners, and local businesses of the effects of chronic absenteeism and truancy and other challenges associated with poor attendance. Positive, effective messaging is something that can really start today. Which is what Anne Frank said, how wonderful it is that you don't need to wait a moment before trying to improve, change the world. Famous words. Since positive parenting messaging is so critical to reduce chronic absenteeism, one LCAP strategy is to provide training to teachers, school staff, and SARB members on the most effective messaging to parents. Attendance Works, and we've sent out a lot of theirs. And the emails that David and I send out, a lot of resources are looking at the messaging. It is so important that we understand the one of which of the 30 or more causes of chronic absenteeism are interfering with this student. And one start is, think about asking the student. It's amazing how much they could tell you, and they're often the last ones people think to ask. They have so much wisdom. The researchers say the causes of chronic absenteeism are complex and vary from school to school, health, transportation, poverty, but one thing I'll say is those with all the causes, I've met students you have with each of these causes who've succeeded. I go back to freedom riders and huge combinations of these, and some still have succeeded. So I don't give up because we just might save this one. But a lack of parental understanding about the importance of daily attendance can lead to higher rates of absenteeism, and parents might not fully understand the negative outcomes associated with missing school. And maybe they don't have the experience with education themselves, simply don't understand the importance of regular school attendance. They didn't have it, maybe they made it. But the idea that early grades are not important, K through 3, success in kindergarten through third grader, the absenteeism there is the greatest predictor of not reading well by grade 6, which is the greatest predictor of not graduating from high school. But the students will catch up. Did you hear what I just said? A lot of students won't catch up because they lack the skill development and they develop the tendency to question, should I go today or not? Or the barriers are building up and they're wearing down. And if they've run up against a barrier and into that barrier so many times, they stop trying. Or they're so bogged down by trauma, or they need the mental health services that can help raise them back up. Yes, we can. People think only consecutive absences have a negative impact. I used to think when I was teaching that what I said today was important, and it reinforced what we talked about yesterday. Neurodevelopment is using that information again in the near future to build the neural networks. And again, it could be the foundation of what we're going to talk about tomorrow, but those who aren't here won't know it, won't be familiar. Absences are fine as long as parents sign off. Well, that makes it an excused absence, but it's still an absence. Chronic absenteeism measures, it includes every single absence, whether it's excused or not, or it's a suspension where we won't let you come to school. And a stomach ache may represent that this kid is being bullied or there's some other trauma going on somewhere, that it's an excused condition. It's medical, it's physical, but it's underlying other conditions. And it's more than just legal compliance, and we're really not out to get people who are struggling to have their kids engaged and can't, and there aren't people ready to pounce on them. The person who was just finished his term as the state president of the Deputy District Attorneys for the state of California, actually now he's in charge of chronic absenteeism in Riverside County, Amir Alavi, made that point at a state SAR meeting. People said, but you still have to have this, we still can go after them in the rare cases where it is really the parent who is just refusing to help the student where they are able. Got it. That is such a tiny percentage of what we're talking about. So what do we say to the parents of chronically absent kids? Well, the Attorney General, actually back up, Kamala Harris, stepped up and they did reports when she was Attorney General on chronic absenteeism. They worked with the Ad Council, a nonprofit organization, and we worked at messaging. So what do we say to parents of chronically absent kids? Here's some. David?
Right.
Messages about absence are better than messages about attendance. And we need to think long-term about consequences of attendance, more concrete, because, we have kids who are told they've already blown their future. No, I have buttons say not yet, and that says you have a future. You may have behaviors we have to work on now. You may have skills that aren't developed, whether in reading, writing, or arithmetic, or in your behavior and attendance. We can get you there before you get to a job where you're going to get fired because you haven't developed these skills. We need to work with you and reinforce eliminating negative and developing the positive. But sometimes schools reinforce negative behaviors. David? David? I can't click. It was found that messages, whoops, that's the same one. Forward click.
Yeah. Ah, there we go.
There we go. So we need to talk about what the child is missing, because parents think, they planned this attendance, maybe they can make it up or something. The child is missing out. Sometimes as a teacher, I found that I asked a question and a student explained this thing in a way that matched some of the other students better than what I had said. Maybe I matched some students really well, but other students, what that child said was right on for them. Wow. And that's why when you get a right answer, you don't just go on, you may ask, can anyone else explain it? And then you turn to that teacher and say, you are so great, you could be a teacher someday. They also miss examples that were discussed that aren't in the book or on the page. They also miss the practice of explaining, and they miss their part in contributing to others' learning as part of a learning community, and often their team efforts. The child who is there is gaining the connection with them, the success, being part of a learning community. And parents think, well, my child attends most of the time, so they're getting that. But they're also experiencing it's okay if I'm not part of that community. And maybe I'm not so needed. And kids tell us that, or when we suspend them, maybe my learning or my presence isn't important, so I just won't be here. We don't want them to, we want to think coming here is important. Unless you're ill, I'm going to make others ill. But talking about what everyone is missing talks about the responsibility of the community. Next.
I don't know why it's happening, Dan. Oh, there. Whoops.
Nope, no forward. No
Okay.
forward. Go back.
Yeah, there it goes.
I'm almost there. So the class rewards, again, for good or improved. attendance and behavior. But again, tell the students they don't hear this. The first day you talk to parents and that your child is so valuable in their contributions. And when kids are absent or away, let them know we missed you. We missed your contributions, your special way of explaining, your interesting questions, or that I know that I have to be sure to explain it in a way that works for you. Teacher needs to remember to draw pictures and graphs and things on the wall for the visual learners, because this kid learns better through eyes than ears. You are so important to remind me. The impersonal form letters, no. You want to also, within the letter, talk about what's been right about this student, besides what's wrong, and what skills we hope to use about your youth, and ask us more about what's right, because that's all we have to work with. Isn't that better than we hate you and we can hurt you? Those are impersonal, but also include something right. If the teacher keeps sending home the work and parents think, well, you just get the work done, the sheet, and that's all, no. We have to say, but that doesn't make up for the discussion and the contributions and the interesting remarks that came up during the day that you missed out on, okay? Parents, teachers, we have to, educators, step up and talk more broadly. But if parents don't feel safe in school, we need to address that. Look at the Healthy Kids survey data, mine that data, look for patterns there, and ask parents and students, is there something that you don't feel safe? Kelvin is this program that asks students online, if you ever feel unsafe, tell us. We're going to be looking at this. You can be anonymous, to answer the questions so they feel comfortable coming to school. Look at the absentee data. And then parents will say, and by the way, other kids are absent this much. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal. We told you that with data. And once or twice a month adds up to a lot, and other kids really do keep coming. Keep moving forward. Forward, and I'm almost done. Forward. I can't be done till we get.
Yeah, I know, Dan. I'm trying to.
Closing thoughts, David.
It's not responding.
Closing thoughts. Well, do closing thoughts where you're clicking, because that's you.
Yeah. So closing thoughts. I'm not sure why it's not advancing anymore, but the closing thoughts, I just wanted to talk two things about. One is that we welcome you to join our state SARB meetings. We have quarterly meetings where we talk with people doing supervision of attendance throughout the state, and we learn from each other. And the other thing is there's also a professional association, the California Association of Supervisors of Child Welfare and Attendance. And that's a good organization to belong to when you are doing this very, very difficult work, trying to keep track of kids and trying to intervene when they're not attending schools. So I just saw that my internet connection is unstable, and I think that's why it's not
David's saying that,
advancing.
then I want to give you two real concrete examples while David's trying to get his in. One is, it's like attendance. If you miss school absenteeism, is it a big deal? When you're going up or down a flight of stairs, does it matter if there's a gap somewhere, a significant gap in the middle, or even a lot of them are missing? That's dangerous. If you're going across a bridge, and you say, well, they're just, the gaps aren't all that big, or there's only one, or we planned for that gap, you can't make it across the bridge. Go visual, go concrete when you talk to parents. Think about that staircase. Think about bridges. We don't want gaps there. We don't want gaps in attendance. David and I, we have our contact information here. One thing I'm sending you is I have a listserv where I send out all sorts of resources most days, less outside of COVID. If you sign up there, if you don't open a message, I'll never find out about it. I don't track that. Also, I'm sending out something from the Perkins Plan for Career Technical Education. I got language into that, which is where you get funding. And it says, here's the whole plan. Here's page numbers where we say everything we do in alternative education to support kids with the huge challenges in attendance and behavior, or that you do in child welfare and attendance, counts as workforce readiness. If you don't master the skills of attendance and behavior, you won't be able to obtain or certainly maintain a job. We want to teach you that just as reading and writing while you're in school. If we don't succeed, kids wind up in school to prison pipeline. Those words are on the page. The counseling work we do to save kids, more general, to help them deal with trauma and mental health so they can access school. If we say we need you ready to be able to obtain and maintain work, see, that's school to career doesn't begin career technical education with how to become an engineer. Here's the math class you need to take. There's so much work for readiness. I got that written into the state plan this year, representing educational options. The language I was able to insert about the work we do is in the state plan approved by the federal government. You can be stakeholders at the table for your Perkins money. That's one of the handouts we sent to you. Okay, we'll answer questions, but after, here's Stephanie. Thank you very much. You're our heroes, by the way.
All right, great. Thank you both David
Hi,
and Dan for a very informative session. And at this time, we are transitioning to the next part of the webinar. And I would like to introduce Stephanie Tick, Safe and Healthy Schools Coordinator at the Santa Clara County Office of Education and the lead for the PBIS Technical Assistance Center in Santa Clara County. So Stephanie.
Hi, and thanks for telling everyone my name and title. Great to be with you all today. Great to see so many familiar names. We are going to just really briefly go over check-in, check-out, which is an evidence-based intervention and how it can be applied in distance and remote settings to support attendance. So for those of you who are not familiar with positive behavioral interventions and supports, it's a framework that works under our multi-tiered system of support to really focus on social behavioral health for all students. So what we want within this framework is we want to be very clear in explicitly defining the social competencies we want students, staff, and families to demonstrate. But we also have to teach and practice those expectations, monitor and acknowledge not just the lack of the proper behavior, but also the pro-social behavior, and provide instruction in how to do better. And all of this, as our presenters earlier said, is actually revolving around making our decisions based on data. So within PBIS, we always start with what do we expect from one another during this time together? Many schools and districts choose to go with be respectful, be responsible, be engaged. And so I just ask in the next 29 minutes or so that you continue to do the great job muting yourself. I also ask that you be responsible and identify what you can do. This might be an intervention that's going to work really well for your school or district or program, but maybe it's not the best fit for you. I'm going to ask you to use Zoom reactions. I actually don't know if these are available in webinar, but we're going to be brave and try it anyway. And then please participate in the chat, the polls, and with reactions as we move through. When we think about engagement, one of the things that most clearly defines engagement into a group or a culture is that we know what we're expected to do, and we know that we'll be recognized for doing it successfully. So we want to make sure that we are constantly focusing on that tier one and answering questions to support all stakeholders in engaging with us. So here you go. I'm going to ask you all to find your reactions button if possible, and we're going to do our best to clap along when our song master here tells us. Okay, so normally if I was doing this with one of my training groups, I would have you all do the cha-cha slide on camera together so that we could share that awesome experience while also clapping our hands. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you all to do that because I can't see you and that ruins the fun. Another way to check on engagement, and remembering that everyone's more interested in attending what we do if they feel like they're part of it, if they feel like they are seen and heard. So another quick engagement check. I'm going to ask Keisha, my fabulous moderator, to launch a poll. And we're just calling this poll the squirrel scale. So as Keisha launches the poll, you can choose an answer, number 1 through 9. Which squirrel are you today? And once Keisha gets about 70% of the answers in, she's going to let us know how the group is doing. I can say that today I'm a number 4 because that squirrel just looks like he's really up to mischief, and I feel like that's a good place for me to be today. And Keisha, just let me know when. Awesome, thank you. And how many folks do we have responding so far, Keisha?
We're at 52%.
All right, cool. We're trying to get to 70. There's no wrong answer. You can be whatever type of squirrel you want to be today.
We're almost there, 10% more to go.
Okay, for the sake of time, maybe let's close the poll and share the results. All right, we have the primary result here would be that we are number 2 squirrel, but we also, close second is number 5, sleepy squirrel here. So thank you everyone for participating in that. I have another poll for you. So this one hopefully is going to be multiple choice, but given the cha-cha slide and the squirrel scale, Keisha is going to launch this poll and you should be able to choose multiple options. Go ahead and launch that. And what just hopefully happened? And we'll just give this one until about 50%.
We're at about 25% now.
When all else fails, you can just click other.
Okay, we've hit 50%.
Thanks. Okay, so we reviewed the participant expectations. Yeah, totally. We did engage in a few low-risk community building activities. We also checked for engagement. So you can see that even with our check for engagement, about 51% of the respondents said that. I can also kind of tell who's checked out when they don't react either with the reactions and the clapping hands. I can then look again and see if the students are answering the poll. So in this particular platform, that gives me the ability to see over time which students are actually engaging in the synchronous learning. And yes, number 6 is always true. We at PBIS, Santa Clara County Office of Ed, are weirdly obsessed with squirrels and choreographed group dancing experiences. All right, so moving forward, I'm just gonna give you an overview of check in, check out. This is an evidence-based intervention that's been around for quite some time. It was intended to increase self-monitoring of social behavior in high school, but it's really been adapted down to be very successful for a lot of other factors and needs that our students and staff have. So a reminder here that we always need to Maslow before we can bloom. And although we want the best and we want to avoid COVID slide and we want to make sure that we are following the mandates and compliance obligations for ourselves, we need to recognize that right now, our little mountain climber here has been 7 months away from school. And the sky was orange and climbed too high. And some of us are expected to be on Zoom at 7 years old from 7:55 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. And it's just not always going to go well. In fact, it's probably not going well for a lot of us right now. So what we need to think about in order to help our mountain climber is how are we going to catch them in the data sources that we're already collecting? So when you think about interventions, we really need to know 3 components. And those components are, what data are we looking at for a student to enter into the intervention? So what qualifies? What are we progress monitoring while the student is on the intervention? And what are the sources that we're going to use to let us know that it's time to modify the student out of the intervention? Intervention should never be a life sentence. Intervention should take like 4 to 6 weeks at tier 2 in order to show some sort of movement towards success. Otherwise, it's back to the drawing table. I added number 4, level of use or response to intervention, meaning we want to see that any intervention has students actually being successful. So we want to kind of look at how many students are on the intervention and how many are meeting those attendance goals. Additionally, I have a note here that we want the students to maintain the attendance goal for about 4 weeks because it takes that long to build behavioral fluency with some of the skills we're asking them to demonstrate. All right, so remember our little dude again, and how does this come back to the new LCAP? So that what qualifies the student initially, our attendance and engagement measures, is what we're gonna progress monitor and is what's gonna help this student climb out of their needs at the lower level of Maslow's hierarchy. So when we think about identification and referral, some basic ways is to just be really intentional with your screening. Identify the students that are based on your current attendance and engagement priorities. We also might need to have an in from a teacher or a parent or even students themselves. So many schools and districts have a request for assistance process or a referral form that leads to some sort of intervention process. That might be a student success team, that might be an IEP of 504, or any other acronym that you're using. So we want to make sure that that's re-messaged during this time as well. Now, taking the actions means that if it's tier 2, true tier 2 interventions can happen within 72 hours to a week. So that means we need to quickly identify and match, and it needs to be a low level of effort by the classroom teachers. And again, we want students to reach kind of a baseline goal of attendance in this case for about 4 weeks before we start fading the intervention. So I'm gonna ask you guys to participate in the chat for this one, but thinking about how we might screen to identify which students need support. This is fake data from a fake school, but I'm gonna ask you to just type into the chat, what do you notice? What trends do you see? And then Keisha's gonna randomly pick 3 and read them out to all of us. All right, thank you. I see those chats coming in. Keisha, whenever you're ready.
Okay, we have Jose only participates in video instruction, maybe just for connection.
That is a great
Older grade levels.
I'm sorry, keep going.
Older grade levels have less attendance.
Also true. Did anyone notice that 6th grade is appearing a lot? I think this is a particularly vulnerable group right now. So one of the trends we might notice is that the students who transition between schools, right? So thinking that I was a 5th grader last year, COVID happened, we went on distance learning. We didn't finish all of those celebrations of the end of elementary school, and we didn't have the opportunity to do the bridging programs we would have done to welcome them to middle school. So it wouldn't be surprising for me if our 6th graders and indeed our freshmen are really struggling right now. And move us forward. So as educators, we oftentimes wear all the hats because we are a center of the community for all intents and purposes. As educators, though, we also can't do absolutely everything. So what we need to focus on for wellness and well-being at our school sites, in our districts, is eliminating the risk factors and increasing the resilience factors. That's what's within our locus of control. So let's just unpack that a little bit. One of the risk factors that we want to eliminate in our tier 1 supports is the inconsistent rules and expectations across sites. Sorry, I have to hide my floating meeting controls. If a student doesn't know what's expected across different settings, they're not going to be able to demonstrate that. And oftentimes we try to define our expectations in the negative. So if you picture the last time maybe you were driving around and there was a red octagonal sign and it had 4 white letters on it. Those white letters say stop. The intention is for you to stop for 4 seconds and look for safety before moving forward. It would be a lot less instructive if that sign said, don't keep moving. So we need to think about really identifying what do we want to see from our students within these virtual or even hybrid settings. The second thing to think about is building up those resilience factors. And what our ability to do here is to really start with healthy interactions. So how do we build school connectivity and safety? We need to have more folks that have a good relationship with our students. So another example, this is from Quimby Oak Elementary in Evergreen Elementary School District, Quimby Oak Middle, sorry. And this was during shelter in place as well. And so what they did was gave the opportunity for students who were following those expectations to be nominated to receive a certificate and an in and out gift card. And so they were able to recognize 242 students just in the initial shelter in place. But what does that look like for Tier 2? So what we need to focus on is 2 aspects of this. Tier 2 should be increasing the dose of what we're doing at Tier 1. Remember, we want to have this be available to students within 72 hours or a week. So it's not a whole brand new thing. We don't have to change our language. We just have to kick it up a notch. So we want to make sure that we are intentionally prompting and pre-correcting expectations. If I have a student who I know is always going to show up late to the after lunch Zoom session, then it's up to me to remember to prompt them before we go to lunch, or maybe even send a little reminder as lunch is coming to the end. We also want to make sure we teach them what we want to see so they feel confident and feel like they're competent in engaging in learning online. We want to make sure that we give them specific praise and feedback, and it's always available. Now, the great thing about a structured Tier 1 is if at least 80% of our students are responding, we know it's working, right? So what does that look like at Tier 2? It's just increasing the number of prompts. I'm going to be more intentional and schedule them throughout the day. I'm going to increase the instruction of the skills. So that might be small group and that might be one-on-one. I'm going to increase the structure of you getting feedback. Instead of just negating the punishing language of you're not doing what you're expected to do, you're not reaching your potential, I'm instead going to find the one thing you did great today and I'm going to shout it from the mountaintops, because that's going to make it more likely that you repeat the behavior in the future. And again, any Tier 2 needs to be something that we're always going for adapting back down to Tier 1. So for behavior, we want the students to build the skills to self-manage some of these expectations. So targeted interventions have some very key characteristics, and we need to consider these before we can consider them actually being interventions. So what I'm going to focus today is how do we use structured prompts, the opportunities for feedback, communication with the parents, caregiver, or a caring adult, and regularly reviewing that data to monitor progress. So this is an adaptation called check-in, check-out attendance. Those of you who are familiar with the actual check-in, check-out program that happens during in-person learning, this is a much lighter version. And so basically the key features here are we're going to increase adult connection and supervision at the beginning and end of the day. And this adult is hopefully going to be someone that's not the student's main classroom teacher. We're trying to build those healthy relationships by connecting them with more folks. Usually and typically, students would have a lot of adult interactions as they're walking around a campus. So we need to think about how do we increase that for them in these strange times when we can't physically interact with them anymore. We also are going to provide frequent and positive feedback for attendance and engagement. Right, what does this look like? So the initial process is 2 daily checks and a daily progress tracker. So student checks in with the mentor at the beginning of the day. The staff member provides praise for attendance. How'd you get here? You got up early, what'd you do? And completes a brief goal settings form with the student. The student checks out at the end of the day, receives encouragement, acknowledgement, and problem solving for how they're going to meet the expectations about the next instructional day. Additionally, we're going to prompt them and remind them what's on deck for tomorrow. The data progress report, pretty simple, probably going to be done in Google, and we want to share that with the family at least weekly. And again, not saying, hey, I noticed that he's going down in points, but instead saying, look at how great this is. Look at how your student's able to begin building the ability to self-monitor some of these practices. and we want to maintain for about 4 weeks. So I'm going to show you a video of this. This is a middle school example.
I wanted to make sure that we also look at what a check-in session would look like for a middle school. This is at the beginning of the day. And so I want to make sure that we take really quick look at what would a check-in session look at to kind of prompt students for a good day.
Good morning, Evelyn. How's your day been going so far?
Pretty good. I'm a little tired.
I definitely understand being a little tired, but I appreciate you connecting with me this morning and getting your day started off on the right track. So I know that you have 2 online sessions that you'll be joining today. Do you have a good location where you'll be able to work for the day?
Yeah, I was planning on working in my room because my sister's been bugging me a lot.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I'm going to pull up your card for today so you can see your check-in checkout card. You have been doing a fantastic job with participating appropriately during the live sessions and being respectful as well.
Yeah, I do like it when the teachers do the Kahoots and the polls. It makes it a lot more interesting.
I agree. So one expectation you haven't been earning all of your points in is being prepared. Do you have the pre-learning activities complete for your online sessions for today?
Let me check. Actually, I have a reading and a couple of questions that I need to do, and I forgot.
Okay, so what time is that session?
2 o'clock.
So when do you have time to get that done during the day?
Well, I think I will have time after my social studies session.
Well, make sure you still have time to take a break and get some lunch too. How about I send you a message around 1 o'clock just to check and see if you were able to complete it?
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Sounds like you have a good plan for today. We'll connect again at 3 o'clock for a quick checkout after your language arts class, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So it seems like that was very scripted, and that's probably because it is not a real video. Very few students who are on interventions want to make instructional videos. That being said, I do advocate for the script. So a lot of times when we talk about this intervention, we think, oh, well, the classroom teacher's already doing so much, and how are they going to be able to increase this level of engagement? But a reminder here, the classroom teachers aren't the only staff we have. And a lot of times the people that the students have the best relationship with might be the office manager or the noontime yard duty. So there are a lot of folks on campus who miss the kids too. And they might be willing to do it if we can build up kind of a script of what we want them to ask. So you saw that that particular educator was taking the student through a problem-solving script. So thanks for showing up. You did a great job. I noticed you're doing great with this. And then how are we going to help you get more prepared moving forward? And we're always going to remind them when the next check is. Another example, this is what we might script for checkout. Is there anything your family, teachers, or I can help you do to reach your goals? So that would help us to kind of mine or surveil for perhaps there's not a good place for the student to do work, right? That student lived in a very nice house and said, my sister keeps bugging me. So for a lot of our students that are temporarily doubled up or living in less than large living spaces, we might need to give them some other opportunities. Maybe we need to help support getting them headphones. Maybe we need to let them not have their camera and their mute on. Whatever it needs to be, this is going to give us that second level of inquiry. I'm going to show you pretty quickly. This is just a Google form, and I did do copy. We don't want to have every form be this long, but a school site could modify a form like this to just quickly go in and do this check with a student. So who's the student? How are you feeling today? Are you prepared? And then we could kind of go through and choose some goals. Just scripting the moves for staff, and it also gives us that data, right? We can be able to see when the student checks. And another concern some people have about installing a tier 2 check-in, check-out for attendance is what if, if the kiddo and the family is already struggling to get there every day for synchronous sessions, then are they really going to come for another meeting? Sometimes, yeah. So we might need to start with a home visit and then set up a schedule for them. And we don't want to overwhelm anyone. So for Blake here, he's just gonna do Monday at 9:30 and check out on Friday at 9:30. They really like email, so they like to do just the form. And then for Tia, look at her, she doesn't do well on Monday, so we're gonna do Tuesday and Friday. For Jose though, he's gonna need a little more. So this particular schedule is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it should say AM, my apologies. I'm gonna show you one other video. So this is an application that is free called Be Positive, and it enables us to track things that we're trying to do to improve culture and climate. So I myself use it at home to increase my levels of behavior-specific praise because I started to slack off and I've noticed that perhaps the dishes aren't being done. So I'm gonna use that to modify my husband's behavior.
From the Center on PBIS, and I wanted to share with you a little app that we've developed called Be Positive that you can get on any Apple or Android device. Show you a little bit about how you can use this for distance learning. So what you can see here is I'm right on the main page. There are 4 different micro apps. I'm just going to click on this first one called Reminder. And what I've got here is 2 preset reminders that I can use, opportunities to respond to specific praise that I want to cue myself to increase while I'm doing my distance instruction. So I can just start right here. Now it's set as a 2-minute reminder, and that's going to cue me on my watch, it's going to cue me on my phone, and so on. And then if I want to actually track my behavior, I can just tap up and down for any session that I want to, and it's right in there. If I go back to the main menu, if you look at this pre-correction alarm, this is a really useful way to remind me on a pre-scheduled time things that I want to make sure to do. So what you can see here is I've got a check-in, check-out, check-in with Trey and his mom, and that's Mondays and Fridays at 4:30, so that's going to cue me there. I also want to make sure for Trey that he comes to my live sessions, so I've got him here, and that reminder sets me up 15 minutes before I can send him the login info and make sure that he's coming to live sessions. And then of course for my higher ed instruction, I want to make sure to remind my students to give them a bathroom break because, yep, I sometimes forget to do that too. Cue over here, the counter I showed you before, and then I'm going to show you stats right down here as well. You can look, and here's my rates of specific praise for all the sessions I had. Click on progress and I can show that over time. This is what I'm doing with you right now. And then what I can do is I can hit this share button, click over to mail, and I can send myself or anybody that graph that we just showed and the data right there. Thanks everybody, take care and be safe.
All right, so just another tool for your toolbox. I also want to let you know that a lot of these resources are available on pbis.org. I'll add the chat once I'm finished presenting here, the link into the chat. And they're all run through the U.S. Department of Education and the Office of Special Education Projects. So there is a lot of federal funding that makes resources like this available to you, and they're pretty easy to use. My last reminder to everyone, things are challenging right now. We had this plan last year. It might have been a little bit uphill, but then reality struck. Something happened in March and maybe there fell down a hill, and then we had to have a gondola, and we had to recommission a cruise ship to get across the bay. For some reason, we have to fall down this pit, climb out while it's raining. I want to remind you of this. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, home of Fred Rogers. And one of his most famous quotes is that when he was a small boy and would see scary things, his mom would say, look for the helpers, because you're always going to find people who are helping. And so if we look back at that reality, there's all the places where there were helpers. And for a lot of our students and families, we're going to be the people that they remember when they look back. We're going to be the people that helped them to make it through this time. And we need to be the people that help each other. So maybe someday I need someone to hold an umbrella over my head after I fall into this ditch. But I'm going to remember, and I'm going to know that there was a community there that cared about me. All right, that is it for me. Thank you for your time. I like your cat, Dan.
Oh. Yeah, I said there's another one who tends to, I saying, more Siamese, who tends to introduce herself during introductions. She didn't today, and then Spot just kind of came over and said, "Okay, Dad, you're not presenting right now." So here, okay, here's Spot.
Wow. Thank you for
There we go.
sharing.
Okay, it was her idea. Thank you. Yeah, Stephanie, I do workshops on listening to the wisdom of youth. I call it about what supports or undermines their resilience. And, and I like that you had in there, and actually talking to the kids and their families and asking them and letting them know that they're, you see them as experts in their own lives, or can be, in that positive messaging that goes out in the check-in and check-out. Your questions are letting them demonstrate mastery to themselves, and their views matter. And, when they feel remote, how important they are to be connected. So thank you. That was so well done. I will be sharing your PowerPoint. I know all the people on this one will do, but if you don't mind, I'll be sending it out, I think, through my listserv too. So.
Oh yeah, we are a sharing community here.
We
so
are.
Whatever you guys need.
Right now.
So thanks everybody.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. So right now we're going to transition to the questions and answer part of the webinar. And I'm going to begin by this first question. It's from a County Office of Education. Do we have permission to use slides in our own supervisors of attendance training in our COEs?
Absolutely, you can use these slides.
Yeah, that's why we're sending everyone the full PowerPoint with the slides, and also, this is being recorded, and that we apologize to those who had difficulty getting in at first, but you can catch the parts you missed or tell your colleagues. We're sending out everyone the full recording and the full slides to use, review, and I pick up slides sometimes from others. They need permission, and we're in this together. We're a team.
Great.
And if anything you forget, what did you say with that or something, call us. It's never an imposition, or email us.
Yes, the PowerPoint has so much information, and thank you so much for your hard work in preparing for this.
And we have further detail. I mean, David and I probably have another 300 slides. I said we probably presented, I don't know how many different types of workshops at over 150 conferences and things over the years. So you think this was a lot, but we could go into greater detail for you. And Yi asked us to do this workshop, others do. We try to say yes. And they say, Dan, can you present? David, can you present? We say, what do you want? It's not what presentation do you have, but if you tell us, we will tailor the emphasis to as well as we can to meet your needs. And sometimes we're bringing slides in from others who said things so well, we don't have to start from the beginning. We'll credit them, but we'll use them. Teachers we don't have time to develop every single material we put in front of students, counselors, child welfare and attendance people, right? So ask.
All right, great. So there is a question about strategies for re-engagement. I know that maybe both, Dan, you have kind of answered it. And I think definitely Stephanie's presentation kind of addressed this question, right? What type of activities are recommended to re-engage students in order to improve attendance? And then also, are home visits encouraged to motivate students to attend school? So do you have anything additional information that you would like to add to this question?
Stephanie, do you want to go first?
Why don't you go first and I'll follow up?
Okay. One is you set the foundation from the beginning when you first meet the students and their parents of your view of who we are in this community, and we're a team together and working together. So the initial messaging is step one to making it possible to have an effective follow-up approach to re-engage, and our willingness to understand there's so many barriers and it's not a blame game, but maybe we just, again, I love modern dance, and some people can communicate stories through dance. I can appreciate some of what they're trying to tell me, Don't ask me to communicate that way. No way do I have that skill. And so, we have to come up with a way that matches others, and they'll tell us what they're interested in, what they're good at. And then if I know that, I can follow up, or maybe I've used it before. So ask these preparatory questions. What are you interested in? What are you good at? What are your challenges? And I'm so willing to talk to you. The family, I respect you. I understand that not all cultures are the same. I've mentored you talk about Southeast Asians. I've mentored people from 12 very different Southeast Asian cultures. I want to show an understanding and respect for who you are and listen to your context. And I'm interested. I'm not just data, but the details of who you are matter to me and your situation. But I'm very respectful, and I want to set that tone. But I do ask a student. I know in the SARB handbook one time, there was a glowing claim that in the inside cover, a student came to a SARB who'd been chronically absent, and the SARB discovered that the student had early onset arthritis in her hips and couldn't go up the stairs. And they were so proud that they just discovered that. So I rewrote it. And I said, what a tragedy that the student and family had to go before this assembled group of these experts, on a special day when no one had bothered to ask her ahead of time, why weren't you making it to that class when you made it to others? And so saying we expect you to be knowledgeable and wise helps. Engaging students, again, if you have literature, if you hand them a book that sounds like a character themselves, if students are struggling, the Freedom Rider Diary, if you know it, every diary entry is talking about challenges that may have in common with some of our students, and then they can talk about them rather than saying, this is my story that you may be a little afraid to reveal. So you can get them and show, but I have this interest in talking to you. We need more ways of explaining. There's a teacher, it's tremendously talented. She was a community day school teacher. She taught math and science. She went back and got her master's on how to explain math to those who the regular way of explaining it doesn't work. And she got a master's degree. And so we have different ways of saying what works. Again, ask questions and then ask for repeated answers and let them practice being experts. I heard that answer. I don't just go on because someone I knew can give me a right answer and I feel so good about myself as a teacher, I got a right answer. Ask who else can explain it. Involve more students, engage more students regularly, and ask them for a different way and to practice explaining and listen to that and their ideas. Give them different ways to express themselves, whether through writing, through the arts, through these computer skills that I don't have nearly as much. Have them practice explaining to each other to reinforce it so that they're not just being passive in doing the assignment, but these engagements. Give them breaks, which we didn't today, I apologize. These stretch breaks and getting up and dance. Some of us would have been more awkward in our cha-chas, but would have tried hard anyway. Stephanie. But there are many ways to keep coming back. And then also ask their friends sometimes or someone else, do you have an insight? Or do you have other key adults who might know how to, is it safe for you for me to talk to them? Would that be helpful? So we truly have a village. So that's my starting point, Stephanie. Go for it. And David,
I think I agree with all that you've said. And I just also implore, we're better as humans when we respond to a structure. So if we want to build connection with families and students, let's start with saying, hey, everybody find 5 students and families to positively call. I think many of you probably have children, and when's the last time you got a positive phone call from school?
Right.
And that's just really simple. And people say, well, language, what have you, but we used to do them when I was an administrator, and I would just have the student interpret for me sometimes. But there are lots of resources out there. If people aren't comfortable doing the phone calls, you can also say, everybody send 5 postcards a week. The great thing about the postcard is you can also then check and see, do we even have the right address? And again, I'm not looking to see if you're not in my attendance area. I'm looking to see if maybe you've been displaced. I'm looking to see if maybe you just had another transition. I'm trying to catch what the barrier is so I can help you navigate it as much as possible. But if we just ask our staff, what would be reasonable for us to build community, you're going to find that they're very willing to do these things, especially if we take them in small chunks.
And as I said, presentation, even when you're having a call and it's about something negative and it needs correction, you can still begin that call with talking about strengths. And then because, those are the only building blocks you have to work on the disadvantages. It's something we do an exercise in the workshop. I say, I ask people to make a stack of alphabet blocks 5 tall. And I see people moving their hands around, and I get to the end and say, who actually did one? None of you did. You tried, you waved your hands, it was pretty to watch. But why? Well, because you didn't give us alphabet blocks. You just asked us to, out of there. We understood the concept of 5 and stacking. So you can only work with what's actually there. So we want to ask them and tell them we've recognized there are positives. Otherwise, it's hopeless. And if you start out with the positives, it's really disarming. And then keep asking them, can you add to the positives, to work in this situation, and going back to that strength-based approach. When there's a referral, I say on a referral, there should always be room on the referral form to not only talk about what was negative, but what was positive and what are the interests that are available to you. I've referred the student to as an expert. So that they come in and I could say, see, they actually said there's something right. They said they really did. I thought they just said telling me I'm bad and in trouble. No, they actually recognize and be a bureaucrat. I'm not a natural bureaucrat. Many of us aren't. But if you put that in enforcement, I can't accept this referral for the kid being in trouble until you've actually filled in all the sections. I can't even look at the name to take the kid away from you. And they have to go back and fill in what's right, be a bureaucrat. But then we can have a very positive conversation, and go back to the parents and student and anyone else and ask it, and then ask them later on, how many more positives do you have now? And what have you learned that we can add? And what negatives maybe have disappeared now because you had help in doing it? So, that's good. And another way to do it is at the SARB, we had we can send you the PowerPoints on youth court. Again, other youth can be experts on helping other youth. And restorative practices involve the community members and other youth to be experts and demonstrate that, see, even if you didn't have a good idea for yourself, kids like you can, so you can too. It's not only do you get the good ideas, but you get the model that you can expect this of yourself. And those youth court members were the ones who were in trouble previously. See, it's optimistic. There we go.
Yeah, and on the CDE website, I put in the link for our questions and answers about strategies to improve attendance for students in distance learning. So that's a really helpful website because it has all the frequently asked questions regarding distance learning, and then specifically it has a section that just relates to attendance and absences. It has like 30 different tier 2 interventions that are good. What I really liked about today's presentation by Stephanie is you get the data to know what kind of tier 2 intervention is going to be helpful. And you listen to students about what they need in an organized way, in a structured way, in a positive way. I think that's the ideal tier 2 intervention.
And the resources we send out to you regularly will give you more and more and more that you can see how much time you have to look at them when you do. But we'll just keep sending them out. And if we haven't said, send us a message, hey, I need resources on this, we'll try to oblige.
Okay, great, thank you. I know that Stephanie, you have another engagement at 11:30. So thank you so much for spending your time and being here with us today. And if we have any follow-up questions, we will send an email to you. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the PBIS email into the chat. So it's pbis@sccoe.org, and that'll connect to our team. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you.
David and I will stay till the last questioner is done.
Yes, so right now, and both David and Dan will be available to answer questions until we answer all the questions. That's very generous and nice of them to do so. So the next question is about attendance reporting, the next group of questions. So first one, for middle school period by period attendance, does that affect ADA or is it just full day absences?
Yeah, it's just full day absences now, and there's no ADA. Very, very few school districts are being funded by average daily attendance right now. So most districts are using their previous year's ADA for funding. So that worry about average daily attendance isn't really needed anymore. What you do need to be paying attention to is your chronic absenteeism rate. That is data that is still being collected. And even though it's not going to be on the dashboard, there is still accountability for chronic absenteeism this year.
And it represents kids who are not engaging in learning and contributing to the others' learning. You know, it's not just a data thing. There's a real loss to everyone.
So then here is another question. What would you please speak to excused and unexcused in regards to the new number codes that we are being asked to use?
Right. So a lot of districts in their learning continuity attendance plans have added codes for connectivity and for short-term disruptions of connectivity and long-term disruptions of activity. Those are all locally designed codes. At the state level, what we're doing is collecting the absences based on whether they were excused or unexcused. So you have complete freedom in what local codes you're using that will inform your decisions about barriers to attendance. What we're collecting at the state level is only whether that code that you're using counts as excused or unexcused. So,
David's been sending out to people examples of other districts who have really good detailed structures. Some of the onlines are doing well. I know Coalinga last year, well before COVID hit, came up with a very extensive, very helpful, informative way of documenting various reasons for absenteeism. So we could share those expert sources with you. David?
Yeah, I was just saying that the codes you use are important because they tell you what the barriers are. So if you find that you have a lot of health barriers to attendance, you know to involve a school nurse, you need to know how to address those concerns. If you have a lot of connectivity problems, that's a different type of barrier. And so having a lot of codes is very helpful. But the state didn't actually tell districts what codes to put in their learning continuity and attendance plans, but they expected each district to come up with its own plan for determining codes that would be helpful in their areas.
Okay, great, thank you. So here is a question related to Tier 2 early intervention. On the slide, it says for students missing 10% or more of days enrolled. And the question is, it's 10 or more days, not 10 or more periods. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the state definition is 10% of days enrolled. It makes a student a chronic absentee. So it's just, actually, I think you don't wait till a student is officially a chronic absentee. As soon as they start to miss school, you need to respond to that. But the state defines a chronic absentee as a 10% of days enrolled. And every time a student becomes a chronic absentee, that's looked upon as a warning indicator that something's wrong. That's just kind of the sort of arbitrary. There actually was research that said that when a kid misses 10%, that's significant. Before that, it may not be significant, but you still need to pay attention to it. And then for kids that have severe chronic absenteeism, that was defined as 20%. So at that point, you have a pretty severe problem with the students. It's 20% of days enrolled. Now, what's the tough thing is I think that you need to respond as early as possible, because a kid could be missing only one period, and then he's never going to be chronically absent because he's participating that day. You still need to pay attention to kids, even if they don't reach the point of being labeled a chronic absentee, because missing any amount of school can be significant. And that's why we're urging people to pay close attention to period attendance with high school students, because you could have a student that's always missing chemistry, always missing math. They're not going to be chronic absentee because they're attending other classes, but there's still a problem that needs to be addressed. So the state is just kind of giving you a real minimal amount of engagement for a kid to count as being present during that day, but you need to pay attention to more engagement than just whether he counts as being present for that day and whether it reaches 10% of days missed.
And that also gets to, if it's looking at the data for patterns, because if it's a student is always missing one period, that may be an indicator that that teacher, that class needs some support. And again, these are challenges we're facing sometimes that we were not prepared for in our preparation and our experiences. And, if there's chronic absenteeism that, one or several students have with a certain teacher or a certain time, these records show up, we need to jump in because it's the role of the administrator to learn where and how to support the staff trying to work to support the students. And it's not a gotcha, because again, we're being asked to stretch in one may, like a very bizarre game of Twister for some people in skills they never needed before, or certain students are having access, but it's not an access if it's only that one period. So somehow within it's breaking down and some student is not making it because of that breakdown. Can we investigate to see if it is anything that we could do to respond quickly to that situation without having to deal with blame, just to reach success? That's what all of us are in this for.
Great, thank you. So the next question, in my district, an agreement was made with the bargaining unit to only mark students' distance learning present on the actual day that they either attended live instruction or did work. There are different strategies being promoted at the county office level regarding giving students credit for attendance and backdating this information. There is resistance to require teachers to go back in the system to make corrections. What is the CTE's stance on this? Is there any language in the Assembly bill regarding corrections to attendance based on engagement?
Well, I think that it's probably a mistake to say that you can't correct the attendance record when you find out that the student participated asynchronously on a day, because what will happen is your chronic absentee rate will go up. So you are by agreeing to that procedure in your weekly engagement record, what you're doing is you're actually going to increase your chronic absentee rate, because the way it's set up is you are allowed to count kids present if they you find out that they were doing their work on a specific day. And now that you've made this agreement, you're not going to check for that. You're going to be have an inflated chronic absentee rate. So it's really to a district's disadvantage to not count something that they could count for attendance.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question, do attendance supervisors have to be certificated? Does the SARP have to be led by a certificated staff member?
Okay, so that every district has to have someone that is certified as the supervisor of attendance, unless they have fewer than 1,000 students in the district. So small districts have to have a supervisor of attendance, but that supervisor of attendance doesn't have to be certified by the County Board of Education if the district is smaller than 1,000. There's no set qualifications in law for who chairs the SARP. So it could be a classified person. That's kind of a local control issue. I think what the state was trying to do with the supervisor of attendance is it just wanted to ensure that there was a sort of a minimal amount of training for supervisors of attendance, but they gave discretion to counties as to what would qualify for certification. And I think there's a lot of laws like that. And then they gave a break to districts that were less than 1,000. They said, oh, in districts that are less than 1,000 students, one person can be wearing so many hats. Maybe they just don't have the time to get certified for supervisor of attendance. Because I've talked to places where it's one school school district. And the superintendent is also sometimes a sixth grade teacher. They're also the counselor, sometimes they're the bus driver. And so the legislature was trying to give them a break on certification.
But then again, the importance of this role, and it's so clear now, especially with the small districts with their challenges, to get we hope this training has been useful. And the follow-up, knowing that you can have the follow-up could be even some of you more important if you have specific questions. So we'd really like to amend the law. It's a recommendation from the state SARB that all districts be required to have their attendance supervisors certified, just to make sure they've had the access to the information and understand how they can have the access to this type of information. So.
Okay, great, thank you. The next question, if a family is going to their own home school through the state and they provide a verification code, is that enough verification for the district?
So are we talking about a family that's filed a private school affidavit? Yeah. So when someone files a private school affidavit, they are filling out a document where they say, under penalty of perjury, I am going to be teaching the same courses that are taught in the public schools of the state. And I am going to be keeping an accurate record of my child's attendance for every day that I've scheduled instruction in my school. If they're not doing that, they're guilty of perjury. But you're not really responsible for investigating that. In fact, that same ed code says that you're not to evaluate private schools, you're not to endorse private schools. All you're doing is verifying whether they've filed this private school affidavit. It's very unusual to find a case. There's one case I know of where someone perjured themselves on a private school affidavit, where they said that they were providing instruction and attendance and they really weren't. And that case was up in Northern California, and it was uncovered by a probation officer that several of his probation students were going to a school that wasn't really a school. This lady had filed a private school affidavit. She wasn't providing instruction. She wasn't taking attendance. But she was helping these kids escape this truancy loss. And when that got uncovered in court, because one of her students got caught in a stolen car, and the probation officer found out the kid was actually not living up to his probation because he was truant from school, the court notified CDE, and then we revoked the private school affidavit. But that was a really unusual situation, and normally you're not going to revoke a private school affidavit. You're just going to verify that the parents filed it.
Hey, thank you. The next question is regarding data. I know that Dan shared a slide regarding race and ethnicity and chronic absenteeism data. So is there data to cross-reference the rate of chronic absenteeism with socioeconomic status?
Yeah, CDE doesn't cross-reference the data. We just have we collect the data from the school districts by the different subgroups, and then we display that data through CalPADS. But we don't do an analysis. We say, how many African Americans are chronically absent? Are they also poor? We don't do that kind of analysis, but that would be an interesting analysis to do. I think that could be someone's PhD thesis. They could go in and start cross-referencing this data from the different subgroups and see what's the correlation with poverty, with race, or subgroup like foster youth or homeless youth. That would be an interesting study.
In their spare time, it'd be an interesting thing if we could get to the people who have the data quest to be able to link and, for the recognized populations within populations where race, ethnicity, foster, homeless, we do, in some measures, we do look at measurement by, free and reduced lunch for socioeconomic.
Right.
and the correspondent breakdown is just it's a more programming and setting up all the screens. But I think we have a superintendent now who is so interested and committed to looking at the data, State Superintendent Tony Thurmond, and the underlying causes and barriers that, you know, we'll take notes, but we also want to be aware that staffing at the state level is small. Like, you are looking at the two-person attendance behavioral intervention strategies and support team right now. There are others we talk to, but when it really comes down to it, the data people and computer people, there aren't that many, and you can imagine the demands. But I think it's a very important question to be able to, at the state level, not, be able to mine the data. We do break it down in ways that they didn't by some of these categories on absenteeism, behavioral specifically, but we don't have the crossover data that you're requesting that I think is very important.
And I think
we would love to work with researchers.
Right. I think that there's going to be a lot of rich data coming out from this year and future years where we're going to see patterns that are really important. So I think that this is an area that's going to be rich for research. And the fact that we are now collecting chronic absenteeism data at the state level year after year is going to, it's going to be, I think there'll probably be several doctoral theses that come out of that chronic absentee data that's being collected at the state level.
I say, if you need to get a second doctorate and write another dissertation, you've done it once, so you've proven you have the resiliency. I tell people who've been through stresses and strains that you have something that others who hit the oh my levels of challenge for the first time don't have. You have a success in having been through severe stresses and change. And this is how I counsel students, by the way, who are going through trauma. See, what you made it through, and I'm sorry you made it through some pains, but look what you have now. So that you can make it through a whole doctoral study. We'd be glad to work with you.
Hey, we'll do some recruitment.
There you go.
Great, thank you. So the next question is regarding resources. Do you have a link or resource for the pulse surveys for attendance?
There are different vendors that are doing that. The one that we studied at the State SARB was Kelvin. But I know that that's just one vendor that's doing pulse surveys. And I think every district is going to look at the advantages and disadvantages of companies that offer that, and pick a vendor that works best for them. And Kelvin is being used a lot in a lot of the rural areas, and I think that they found that there's some advantages for using that particular survey in rural areas, but then there may be other districts that do well with other survey methodologies.
Some of the professional associations also have their chat groups. I know the school counselors through the school social workers group. We're hoping CASWA, we might be able to get more going back and forth through their online journal. David and I put out through our listservs what others bring to our attention of tremendous resources, and we take those forward. I'm always copying out of their links. David and I subscribe to a lot of listserv email screens, and then we pick up and send forward some of these wonderful examples. But others put out their questions. Who's got a good one on this type of thing, with social emotional connection, whatever. And then you'll find out people not only suggesting, but commenting, yes, that was a really good one, or it worked for some, but not all, and here's how. And they're very direct in supporting each other. So the more, if you belong to association, bring forward the question and ask them to send it forward. And then again, you're getting my contact, my listserv information to sign up. And that's some of the information that I send. And David sends out for those who sign up. And people are asking how to learn about SARBs. Right now, you have to contact David to be on the mailing list for state SARB that he has. He's trying to get that you can sign up on your own. We're working on it. Mine, you can just go online and subscribe yourself. So there you go. And if you know some, send it to us. And we'll often say, hey, Sherry Haney in Butte County, which Child Welfare and Attendance had some great ones. I said, Sherry just sent this one, and she's incredible. And I think a week or two ago, here's some more Sherry stuff, because she's so good at gathering that data. You do the same for us.
Great, thank
Next.
you. So I know that one of the question was about, somebody mentioned that they get a lot of wonderful information at the last state SARB meeting, and they would like to continue to receive the information or to get others to be part of this. So then would they send an email to Dan to be added to the listserv, or to David for the state SARB meeting?
Yeah, we're Danvid, but David is the chair of the state SARB.
Yeah, so send me your emails and I will add you to the state SARB listserv. And it looks like we're hoping November 19th will be our next state SARB meeting. And as soon as we get that approved, then we'll send out the link to that Zoom meeting.
And that's open to anyone who wants to observe. Right. We had like 120 people participate in the last meeting, David?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's, and David is remarkable in the presenters he brings. The youth coordinator, he gave 2.5 hours in this case. Sometimes, they're very much briefer presentations you can follow up, but also sometimes we go into depth. So sign up, sign up, sign up.
Yeah, and we can send out their PowerPoints too, if you want the youth court PowerPoint. And that turned out to be a very helpful intervention, especially for some older students. Since right now during distance learning, we're not expecting a lot of referrals to court. It's going to be really an exception that SARB cases go to court, but you can send SARB cases to youth court or peer court or for mental health resources. Those kinds of referrals are still anticipated. And I was really impressed with youth court as a possible tier 3 intervention. And I know some districts are using that in their learning continuity and attendance plan as a tier 3 intervention for kids who are not attending school.
And what I like, because I really believe in youth agency, youth voice, asking them for their wisdom and them listening, is that they had 2 PowerPoints in there that were youth doing the explaining, not just us former youth talking about youth, but youth themselves who are seen as being experts on youth and having some really deep thinking. And so what a wonderful model, youth explaining about youth helping youth.
And Marin County is doing this youth court with Zoom. So there's no physical presence, but all the kids are participating through Zoom.
Okay, that sounds great. So another question is, how can someone get onto Dan's list?
My email list, and we're sending that to everyone, how to subscribe online. You can also send me an email. You can put my email in the chat, and it's on the end, and I'll sign you up, subscribe you. And there's no limit to how many people can subscribe, because David and I, for our list, we just click on send, and it goes to everyone. If we added 1,000 more people, it would still be that same clicking the send button. So share it broadly to anyone you think might be interested in, and tell them, again, we don't monitor who opens the messages. We're just happy that people find it useful. The other thing is we advertise workshops when we get back to being in person or parts around the state. People would say, yeah, I want to know because I'd like to go there. Or if you're not traveling, but if you want something more in depth for you, you can also say, hey, could you customize or do that one for us? And one thing that's come positively out of the challenges of COVID is we're doing webinars, but if we do get back to in person, we've traveled all over the state trying to get into more remote areas where people can't get to the big places of assembly because it takes so much time and money to get yourselves places. So we have broader access now, but also you can say, look, I missed that, it's not saved. Can you arrange to have another one for us in particular, or a broader, or do a statewide webinar? And we'll do our best to make it happen for you. So that's why we don't screen and say, we'll send some to you. Northern Californians get this, and Southern and big districts that. No, you pick out what's there and then challenge us to match it to meet your needs. And we'll do our best to come through. And we have some remarkable co-presenters. If you know, like Christian Moore in Why Try. I've traveled around the state with Christian. David and I presented with him. We've invited people like him. Steve Johnson, people go back a bit, Santa Clara University on character-based literature. I traveled with Steve to different places. The Freedom Writers, we advertise how you can go online through the Freedom Writers Foundation and get the originals who are now, one of the woman with the curly hair on the cover of the Freedom Writers Diary, she just turned 41 yesterday. We're still in touch with her. Many of them have been through Toastmasters and they do live online Zoom meetings with you and your classes and your schools and your students. They're, I believe, reasonable, especially if you mentioned Dan, he's a Freedom Writer teacher, he told us. Aaron Gruelle can meet with you through Zoom. There are different ways to bring these tremendous speakers and we advertise them or ask us. And we might be able to get them for you.
Great. Wow. Thank you for sharing these wealth of resources.
We're here with you today because ye reached out. And we quickly, David and I said, yes.
I'm very, very grateful for the support, from the Department of Education.
Well, I'm glad you reached out. You're good.
Yes. And here is another question. Is there a link available to the most current SARB guide?
Yes, there is. It's a little bit tricky because if you go to the CDE website and you put in SARB Handbook, you'll get a web page. And that has another link on it. And that brings you to the San Diego County Office of Education, because that's actually where the SARB Handbook is housed, on the San Diego County Office of Education. You'll get to that web page at the San Diego County Office of Education. And you have to go to in the middle of the page, it says additional attendance resources. And under additional attendance resources on that web page, it has the SARB Handbook. At San Diego County, they call it the SARB manual, but it's the same thing, the SARB Handbook. And you just click on that, and that gives you the actual PDF file. And so it's a little bit hard to find because it's housed on CDE website, it's housed on the San Diego County Office of Education, but we link to it from CDE.
And then we had been writing an updated version at the end of last year, and we were almost ready to put it out to everyone in the field. And CASWA, the State Child Welfare Intensive Organization, agreed to put it on their website and wrote right on the front page. And then COVID hit. And okay, so we had to pull it back, and we've been working on this presentation. You see, we're referencing distance learning and those challenges, and rewriting the handbook right before it was released. And we're working on updating it to include a lot of concerns and remove some things that can't apply during this pandemic. And we hope to have that one out for you in the near future. And then CASWA has already promised again that as soon as it's ready, they'll load it onto the front page again, the CASWA website, and all of you can access it. And we do it externally because sometimes it's easier to load it and really quickly. They can slap it on the next day. In state agencies, there's levels of things have to be checked out and approved in stages. It's just necessary as working the bureaucracy. But they can do it the first day. That's why we do it. So stay tuned, and as soon as it comes out in our resource guides and our listservs, we'll send you a link and announce it.
Right. I just put the link. Thank you, David, for the direction on how to locate the SARB handbook. I just put the link in the chat.
Oh, great.
The next question is, some families are confused about the SARB process because of the distance learning. They are under the impression that they will not get into trouble. Is this true?
No, the legislature said that compulsory education is still in effect. However, they did modify the attendance procedures because of the pandemic. So rather than getting a first truancy notification, the parents are notified that their child is missing school. It's a more parent-friendly notification because we're recognizing that there's a lot of obstacles to attendance right now that we didn't have under normal times. So the legislature has kind of created a temporary thing for distance learning that's more, I would say, parent-friendly and less about threatening parents with compulsory education consequences, but they still are possible. And we still, they still are encouraging referrals to SARB. They are, but they're trying to avoid the courts as being the solution right now during this time because of the severe circumstances. And instead, they're wanting the SARBs to link families to mental health resources and physical, trying to support the families without court intervention. However, they say that in extreme cases where a child really needs court intervention, it's still allowable. It's just going to be the exception, and they want the court to be very much a last resort remedy, an exceptional remedy, but it's not ruled out.
Okay, thank you. I think this is the last question. Do we have to follow the Brown Act to post in advance the SARB meeting and follow the guidelines of the Brown Act?
Yes, you do. So SARB meetings are considered public meetings. Now, there's two kinds of ways. You have open session and closed session. When you're meeting with a family about their child, that's a closed session SARB meeting. And that has to be, that you have to post that you're having closed session meetings with families, but that's not open to the public. The open part of the SARB meeting where you talk about strategies you're going to use in the district and different incentive programs that you may be developing for a district, that's all open session, and that has to be agendized, and members of the public can be a part of that if they want to be. I know it's very rare that members of the public say, I want to be involved in the attendance awards program. But if they do, they have the legal right to be a part of the meeting, and you do have to post the agenda under the Brown Act for SARB meetings. And just make sure that when you do that, you say what part of the SARB meeting is an open meeting where you're going to be discussing general things that everyone can participate in, and what part of the meeting is a closed session. And usually with the closed session part, you will just use student ID numbers to identify who you're having closed session meetings with. You don't identify publicly the names of the people that have been referred to SARB.
But as we said earlier, the SARB not only should be looking at just this individual student case as an isolated, completely individual issue. It's a responsibility of the supervisors of attendance and the SARB to look for patterns. Mm-hmm. And model SARBs do this more. But we need people to take the time, and that's why this open meeting to say, this isn't a meeting focused on an individual. We really want to talk with the SARB members from the different expertise, which is in law, to be among the membership, to be able and let the stakeholders, parents and anyone else come in and say, we really want to talk about parents because we want to look at school climate or supports or barriers or resources we keep having the same issues come up. We need to do something about it. Who has answers, who has resources can be added to what we have who can identify the challenges that are keeping more kids out of school. And it'd be wonderful to have meetings that rise above this individual student to say, let's look at the system. At the same time, we need the individual meetings because I said the language, you heard, I'm a word person, and the whole child is great because we talk about whole. But I've been trying to convince the department to stop saying that and say, this whole child, because I've never met, even identical twins have their differences. And it's the backgrounds and everything else. So sometimes we need to go to look at whole, and that's an advance, but go from the whole to this whole. In others, we need to look at the whole in its entirety without going to this to notice in the system where they're, and the more people who can participate and bring their wisdom and their answers and their commitment and their resources, what a fabulous meeting. That's what happens at State SARB. We don't evaluate individual students. We're looking at across the board issues with all these experts who might bring answers that others can use, so we won't have so many individual students coming into individual meetings. And then we make recommendations to the state superintendent and maybe for some legislation, and people take it back to their own associations. So the ones that would be Brown Act and open are really beneficial to everyone, and could be written into continuity plans.
That's right. And one of the things that we're seeing is the legislature said that their intent is for SARBs to evaluate the effectiveness of their strategies and to make changes in their strategies if they find that they're not effective. So SARBs have this role in seeing what the district is doing and making recommendations for changing. And that's definitely something that you want public input for.
And then each of you who are in Santa Clara County and after today are being certified by the County Office of Education as supervisors of attendance. You saw in the beginning slides, David read, these are your responsibilities also to look at the system. What are the patterns of challenge? What are the supports that you have that you can bring to others within your reach? What supporters could you bring in or be the one to ask and receive answers and say, yeah, bring it to me, bring your good ideas. That's part of the role of the supervisor attendance. And I did see a question come up and kind of answered. Those of you who are doing this more for professional development from outside the county or would like to, you can go to your own county office. It isn't the responsibility of Santa Clara County Office of Ed. It's not their legal possibility to certify you. The California Department of Education does not certify supervisors of attendance, but there are other county offices who have agreed, and they can look at the PowerPoint and say, based on the training that you were in, we're willing to certify you for our own county, for those of you who are not in Santa Clara County. But each county does their own certification, so I want to bring that up. But there have been, David and I have done some of these presentations, other counties who've decided, we can't tell them to, but agree to this possibility. Thank you. Any other, thank you people again for your direct service to our youth. There are only 6.2 million students in California. I always say LA Unified has more students than some states have people. We're big in California. We appreciate you so much. Yi, thank you. You're wonderful.
Oh, thank you, both David and Dan. We are really grateful for your support and sharing so much helpful information, and we will network, from here. Wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Yi.
Great. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
And purrs for my cat.